A slender young woman in tight jeans approached the reception. The employee at the hotel reception desk politely asked how she could help. The brunette held a purse in her hands. She told her interlocutor that she had picked it up. The hotel employee listened attentively to the guest. Unexpectedly, Miss showed her police ID. She needed to check the owner of the wallet. She wanted to return it herself. The girl answered the call by pressing the earpiece in her ear. The subordinate was wondering if the boss had managed to get inside. The brunette confidently walked down the hotel corridor. She simply entered with the help of a stolen wallet. The girl was going to check if the wallet was really missing and then return it to its owner. VIP room. The detective was surprised how one could stay in such a luxurious place on fraudulent money. She looked around. There were only 3 rooms. The brunette stopped at one of the hotel doors. The young lady decided to first check the face of the wallet owner. Kang Hee stared at the wallet in her hands and suddenly flinched when she heard the words that stalking was a crime. A tall, slender brunette appeared in front of the girl. He stood with his arms folded across his chest. He continued that stealing was an even more serious crime. The brunette tensed up. She was surprised. She wondered, could this man really be the owner of the wallet? The girl quickly pulled herself together. She pointed to the object in her hands. She confidently said that it was just a misunderstanding. Miss Ju smiled warmly. She handed the wallet to the guy. She asked if he was the owner of the wallet. She said that she had not stolen it, but had come to return it. The brunette frowned. He was quite tall. He looked down at his interlocutor. The detective suspected that the handsome man did not believe her words. Kang Hee continued to smile in a friendly manner. She extended her hand with the wallet to the guy. She offered him to take the wallet. The young man finally made a decision. The man's hand reached out to meet the black wallet. The brunette froze. She noticed the guy's hand. More precisely, the ring she noticed on the little finger of the stranger's left hand. Kang Hee frowned. The girl peered into the stranger's face. The brunette stared at his interlocutor in surprise. He did not understand her close attention to him. A glimmer of recognition flashed across the young lady's eyes. Could it really be Yu Jin? The image of a timid young man with glasses floated up in her memory as if in a fog. The sun played in the windows of the high-rise buildings. The wind swayed the green branches. The city lived its own life. Once upon a time, this boy revealed to Ju Kang Hee that he liked her. The timid brunette in glasses said timidly that it was not easy for him to admit this. And he said this to the girl with a willingness to accept her refusal. The young people sat next to each other. Yu Jin admitted that he had already made up his mind, so everything depended on her. He carefully touched the girl's palm. The brunette was clutching something tightly in his fist. He opened his hand and a ring with an engraving inside fell onto the girl's palm. Their initials were visible there. A single lantern illuminated the silhouettes of a couple. The young man was hugging his girlfriend with trepidation. The night covered the city with silence. Time lost its meaning. Yu Jin hugged the girl to his chest. Blood rushed to his face. The brunette suggested that the girl listen. He said that his heart only responded to her. Kang Hee was embarrassed. She pressed herself against her boyfriend's chest. The brunette heard how hard his heart was beating. A warm, wide smile lit up the guy's face. His dark hair fell carelessly over his forehead. The young man had gotten rid of his glasses. A voice pulled Kang Hee out of the fog of memories. The man standing next to her asked her to let go of his hand. It turned out that the brunette had been squeezing the stranger's hand the whole time. The detective pulled her limb back. She apologized to the stranger. The young man took the wallet from her hands. The ring on the little finger of her left hand caught the girl's eye. She decided that this guy was just very similar to someone she used to know. Very. Suddenly, the detective heard his assistant's voice in his earpiece. He was warning his boss that someone had just entered the VIP elevator. The girl understood everything and thanked him. She gave orders to her subordinates to be ready to move out in 5 minutes. The officers were sitting in a police car outside the hotel. They asked what would happen if it wasn't the one they wanted. The man looked at the tall, modern hotel building. They were already working without the hotel's assistance. What would they do if their boss made a mistake? Kang Hee replied that if anything went wrong, she would take responsibility. The stranger watched and listened closely to the conversation. The brunette cast a careful glance at the young man standing behind her. She promised her subordinate to stall for time. She asked the employees not to hesitate. The young man looked at Kang Hee attentively. The brunette introduced herself. She was a police officer. She showed her badge as confirmation. The girl apologized for approaching him so quickly and without preparation. She asked if he could help her. The brunette asked how. Miss Ju smiled sweetly and offered to stay with her for a few minutes, as if they were together. She didn't finish her sentence. The young man ruffled her hair. He asked what kind of together option would suit her. The detective realized that she had felt it from the very beginning. She kept her eyes on her interlocutor. Her thoughts were all over the place. This man, he was so sexy. The brunette looked at the girl with interest. He suggested that since they were already at the hotel, what did she think about a couple? Kang Hee agreed, decided that would do. The guy smiled mysteriously. He could connect it with his motives. Kang Hee interrupted the other guy's sentence mid-sentence. She was glad if he was okay with it. The brunette asked for permission to hug her so that he wouldn't feel awkward. The girl came closer and pressed herself against the stranger. She laid her head on his chest. She explained that it could be like this. The brunette grinned slyly. He decided that this was not enough. Since they had already started, he suggested trying harder. He put his hands on the girl's shoulders. The elevator arrived. Kang Hee worked in the crime department for 5 years, coolly and calmly, because she was fearless and brave. Last year, the girl was appointed head of the department. She was distracted from her thoughts. She was worried about this situation. The stranger took the girl by the hand. The young man lifted her hand to his lips. It was a polite kiss. Kang Hee noted that it was a coincidence. The man bent over the girl's hand and froze in a half bow. He raised his head and looking into the girl's eyes began to tell her where to begin. The elevator stopped on the 15th floor. The doors opened noisily. Someone in blue sneakers came out of the VIP elevator cabin. Kang Hee was at a loss. She looked at the strange man as if she was enchanted. She could not utter a word. The brunette continued that you need to start with the hand. Kang Hee realized on the edge of her consciousness that this man was clouding her mind. The silver plane was flying in the sky. 4 months had passed since he moved to Korea. During this time, 2 unpleasant things had happened to the brunette. The first was the need for blind dates every week. Camera flashes followed his every move. Passers-by froze, phones at the ready. Second, in addition to working as a designer with just one ad, the guy became a public figure. As if he were some kind of celebrity. Posters with him were everywhere. On the billboard, he towered over the Maybach. Yoojin's confident posture and impeccable appearance were admired. The slogan, "Era of Innovation," looked promising. A loud splash of water broke the silence of the pool. An athletic young man slowly climbed the steps. The brunette watched himself. Drops slid down his perfect torso. He casually combed his damp hair. The relief muscles attracted the gaze. When the guy saw the slender brunette from behind, he thought she was a stalker who recognized him as a model. And that's why she followed him. He called out to the stranger and said that stalking was a crime. He considered theft to be an even more serious crime. The brunette looked back at the voice. The girl held the purse in her hands and studied it closely. The young lady said that it was just a misunderstanding. She did not steal it. Kang Hee smiled and asked if he was the owner of the wallet. The brunette noted her soft features. He saw a mole that caught his eye. He stared at the young lady. Even though time had passed, nothing had changed. She was the same as in his memories. Ju Kang Hee. He recognized her. Although quite a lot of time had passed, but he never forgot about her. The young man was stunned by the meeting. Her whole body was shaking when the brunette took his wallet from her hands, and when she noticed the ring on the little finger of his left hand. The girl was shivering. Kang Hee stood in front of the young man and held his hand. It was she, the one who did not know how to be greedy. The young man was surprised. He was struck by this unexpected encounter with the past. The guy quickly came to his senses. He asked the girl to let go of his hand. The young lady came to her senses and apologized for her behavior. The brunette showed her ID, said she was a police officer, apologized but asked him for help. The brunette asked how. The interlocutor asked to stay with her for a few minutes, as if they were together. The young man thought about it. He suggested that they should be passed off as a couple. The girl agreed. She took a couple of steps towards him and said that she would hug him then. The guy didn't believe that it could work. Kang Hee's face was burning. The girl was red with embarrassment. She looked at her interlocutor with wide eyes. The elevator door on the 15th floor opened. A man's legs in blue sneakers appeared. The detective looked around cautiously. The couple stood in the hallway, hugging. The brunette tenderly kissed the girl's fingers. The suspect confidently walked down the aisle past the young people. Kang Hee quietly whispered to the guy to try harder. She needed the man to call the spectator from the room. The brunette understood her instructions. The young man pulled the brunette closer. She gasped. The brunette began to kiss the young lady's open palm more passionately. He closed his eyes with pleasure. It seemed that the handsome man enjoyed this action. Sometimes he cast his intent gaze at the girl from under his eyelashes. The suspected man came out of the elevator. He walked confidently past a young couple hugging each other. He noticed them. He even whistled something as he passed by. He was impressed by this sight. The man looked back at them several times. The young men continued to stand close to each other. Kang Hee asked the boy to be patient a little longer. She promised that reinforcements would arrive soon. The suspect stopped at one of the doors. He gestured to come look. A round-faced man looked out of the half-open door. Smiles froze on their faces. On the 15th floor, the loud sound of the VIP elevator doors opening was heard again. The sound of heavy footsteps filled the hotel corridor. The rhythmic beat of many feet was approaching. The promised reinforcements had arrived. The detectives ran towards the two male suspects who were standing outside their room with the door open. The bandits had not expected this. Kang Hee turned around abruptly. She called all the employees to her. The young men quickly ran down the corridor. The brunette watched what was happening in surprise. Detective Zhu gave the order to capture the suspects. She ran ahead of her subordinates. The suspected bandits began to run away with a loud cry. With a battle cry, the brunette's legs slid across the smooth floor. Her body turned in a swift movement. The sweep was supposed to knock the suspects off their feet. Soon the offenders were handcuffed. Their rights were read to them. From that moment on, they had the right to remain silent. They also had the right to a lawyer. Anything they said could be used against them in court. The handcuffs clicked. The suspects were led down the hallway past the frozen guy. Detective Zhu approached the brunette. She thanked him for his cooperation. She announced that they had arrested the suspects thanks to the young man. The guy smiled. He admitted that he was glad to help the police, despite the fact that his image suffered. The brunette looked the other way. At the end of the corridor stood a very angry young woman. The interlocutor admitted that she was his date. With a quick gait, the newly arrived girl, striding widely and confidently, abruptly headed in the other direction. Kang Hee was furious. She couldn't understand how this was her partner. This wasn't a restaurant or a cafe, but a room. She cursed silently. The other person guessed her thoughts. Miss Zhu clutched her head. She closed her eyes in exhaustion. The girl asked how she could take responsibility for everything that happened. The brunette grinned. He noticed, was it normal to talk about responsibility so carelessly, especially to a policeman? The girl exhaled sharply. Unexpectedly, she held out her police ID and asked if he would believe her if she gave it as collateral. Kang Hee offered to keep the document for as long as he needed. The brunette took the ID. He asked if it was too much to give away his ID. One of Detective Zhu's subordinates stopped in the middle of the corridor. He closely watched the events that unfolded between the young people. The employee approached the couple. He asked what had happened. The boss explained to Choi Hyun-oh that everything was fine. The guy had helped catch the criminals. Kang Hee was about to leave. She patted the brunette on the shoulder. She told him that if he ended up underwater with her ID, she would get him from underground. The brunette smirked and admitted that stalking was one of her main skills. The handsome man looked at his interlocutor attentively. Detective Zhu and her subordinate headed towards the exit along the long corridor of the hotel. The young man followed them with a thoughtful look. Suddenly, the brunette called out to Zhu Kang Hee. The girl stopped abruptly and turned around in surprise. The guy was a little embarrassed. He asked the question that interested him. He asked if the girl was married. Kang Hee was puzzled. She was silent for a while. Soon the girl answered if he was so curious, she suggested that he contact her. The brunette turned around and called her subordinate to go further. The guy did not take his eyes off the brunette. He recognized him. He noticed that he looked so familiar. Whispered to the boss that it was Yoo Ha-jun, world-famous industrial designer and advertising model. That's why he appeared on TV so often. The young people were walking towards the car. The subordinate admitted that he had goosebumps from the fact that they met a celebrity in person. Suddenly the girl stopped. She was thinking about this news. It turned out that it was Yoo Ha-jun. In the spacious cafe hall, all the customers openly looked at the man in the suit. The attention was obvious. Everyone was wondering if it was really Yoo Ha-jun. The brunette sat at the table. heard whispers behind his back. They recognized him as the man who starred in the Maybach opera commercial. The visitors were delighted. The brunette looked up, hearing a clear female voice. They greeted him politely. In front of him, in a police officer's uniform that suited her incredibly, stood Ju Kang-hee. The girl asked if she was late. The brunette smiled sweetly. He complimented the girl. He noticed that the uniform suited her very well. Miss Ju sat down at the table opposite the young man. She explained her appearance by saying that she had an event before lunch. The young man pushed her police ID towards the girl, said he was giving it back to her, asked her to answer his question. Ha Zhang asked the question directly whether the girl was married. The brunette sighed and said that she was not married. After these words, the man decided to continue. He leaned back in his chair and asked if the girl was interested in him. She even tried to meet him, using her ID as a reason. The young man knew he would be upset, but the reason he got the ID and the reason he came here adjusting his schedule. The brunette interrupted the young man. She sincerely admitted that this was in no way the reason. Be that as it may, the brunette understood that he was interested in Ju Kang-hee. Suddenly, his phone rang. The young man jumped up from his seat. He told his interlocutor that he would return as soon as he answered the call. Ha Zhang went out onto the open terrace. He answered his grandfather. The relative was not very polite, addressing his grandson. "Hey, you!" He said that the guy had received a new life as a gift. Therefore, he should do everything for his family with gratitude. He asked about the date. The guy remained silent. The older relative began to ask why the young man did not answer him. Yu Ha-jin carefully turned to his grandfather. The brunette thought that his new life was not at all like his old one. He clarified that maybe he should just get married. No matter who it was. Ju Kang-hee was sitting at a table in a cafe. The young lady rested her cheek on her hand. Her wandering gaze was directed at nothing. The handsome man returned to the cafe. The girl continued to sit at the table alone. The brunette apologized for making his interlocutor wait. Kang-hee accepted the apology. She asked how she could take responsibility for what happened. The young people sat opposite each other. The brunette stared at his interlocutor. The girl took a glass of water and took a few sips. At that moment, the young man asked her to marry him. The water splashed out with force, splashing everything around. Kang-hee coughed. She put the empty glass down on the table with a bang. She wiped her mouth with her hand. The interlocutor admitted that he was sure that the girl would be surprised. She recalled the dossier. At the age of 27, he became the creative director of Daimler Company, the designer from the East. Impeccable in appearance, shocked all of Europe. The girl was puzzled as to what had made him propose to her. The brunette sitting opposite her was smiling from ear to ear. Kang-hee looked at the man closely. She suggested that he look at his ring first. She pointed to the little finger of his left hand. The brunette raised his hand with the ring. Did the girl really think he had another woman? Kang-hee dismissed this assumption. That was not the point at all. Ha-jun asked if the girl was interested in anything other than the ring. For example, why he proposed to her. The guy twisted the jewelry on his finger. The interlocutor shrugged her shoulders, laughed nervously, said that he probably fell in love with her. Yu Ha-jung shook his head. Kang-hee put her elbows on the table. There was an empty glass next to her and a puddle had formed. The girl said that she would be honest with her interlocutor. The brunette was interested in the reason why she wanted to meet, leaving him her ID. She confessed to Yu Ha-jun that he looked like one of his acquaintances. The interlocutor quickly lowered his head. Kang-hee was interested in whether this was possible. The brunette flared up. She ordered him to tell the truth about where he got this ring from. Detective Zhu was embarrassed by her behavior. She stuttered and asked the young man if they had known each other before. The guy continued to twist the thin ring on the little finger of his left hand. He said that if it was so interesting, then she should continue seeing him. It turned out that the girl's image was not as good as his. The guy looked at the girl intently and smiled mysteriously. Kang-hee jumped up from her seat. She pushed her chair back noisily. She leaned her hands on the table. The girl was tense as a string. The young lady glared at her interlocutor. She suggested that they not see each other again. Kang-hee walked away with determination, her heels clicking loudly on the cafe's tiled floor. The young man remained sitting alone at the table. Heavy drops pounded the hood of a police car as it stopped at the entrance to a high-rise building. Streams of water sparkled in the light of the street lamps. Choi Hyun-oh was driving. The guy looked at the boss. He said that she could rest for now. He promised to return soon. The subordinate got out of the car. opened an umbrella over himself and headed towards the entrance to the building. Huge drops of rain pounded the hood of the car. Kang-hee noted languidly that it was raining, and she was in a bad mood. The girl reached for her neck. The thin chain slid under her fingers. The ring swung, making a quiet jingling sound. The brunette thought of Shin Yu-jin. Kang-hee nervously clenched and unclenched her hands. She frowned. The girl missed Yu-jin. Her memory took her back some time. It was also pouring rain that evening. The headlights of the cars on the road had difficulty penetrating the thick wall of rain. The large express bus swerved from side to side on the slippery road, the rain blurring the outlines of its sidelights. Yu-jin jumped up from his seat. His friend asked him where he was going. The guy thought that their driver might fall asleep at the wheel. The brunette walked toward the driver along the narrow aisle of the bus. In the half-empty cabin, passengers were dozing or looking out the windows. A sharp jolt disturbed them. Through the veil of rain, the bus headlights blurred into red spots. Water flowed down the glass in dirty streams. On the slippery road, the express bus skidded. The brunette looked back. His companion asked Yu-jin to wait. Their eyes met for a moment. Fear was visible in the eyes of his friend. A huge truck emerged from the darkness. The horn cut through the night. I thought about how hard it was for the guy to hide his feelings for so long and just watch the girl. Two vehicles were speeding towards each other on a wet, slippery road. A head-on collision was inevitable. No matter how painful it was, the girl admitted to herself that she would take care of Yu-jin. A loud thud broke the silence. A frightened scream hung in the air. The name of her friend escaped from Kang-hee's lips. The brunette abruptly woke up from her memories. A heavy sigh escaped her lips. The young woman covered her face with her hands, trying to hide from the terrible images from the past. The sharp slam of the police car door pulled the girl out of her heavy memories. Her subordinate was indignant that the rain was so intense. The guy looked at the boss and gasped in surprise. Detective Zhu seemed tearful. The brunette looked tired. The interlocutor said that Kang-hee looked like a corpse. He reminded that the girl had not been home for several days, and there was no face on her. He suggested getting the warrant tomorrow. Hyun-oh was worried about the girl. Detective Zhu said no. They needed the document today. The brunette admitted that her intuition was telling her this. The interlocutor mumbled that Detective Zhu relied on her animal instinct. In the silence of the car, the sound of a blow was heard, and the indignant loud cry of a subordinate. The guy was in pain. He asked the boss not to hit him. He said that cruel women were not popular. Kang-hee smirked. She asked why. The brunette thought for a moment. Then she admitted that in fact there were many men who liked her. The employee called the men crazy. Kang-hee clenched her fist and threatened the young man. She asked if he hadn't gotten enough. The brunette got out of the car. She opened an umbrella over herself. The guy asked her not to go. Miss Ju calmed him down. She told him not to worry. Everything would be fine. Hyun-oh asked what she would do if she was transferred to the province. He reminded her that Judge Kim was adamant. The boy shouted something after the boss. Kang-hee froze in front of the lattice barrier. The way was blocked. The girl stood thoughtfully at the entrance to the building. She swallowed nervously. Suddenly, a familiar voice was heard from the side. The brunette turned her head sharply. The young man thought that the girl had some business here. Before her, in all his glory, stood Yoo Ha-jun. The brunette asked the girl if she had really come to have dinner. Kang-hee said that she came for work. The guy was surprised even at such a time. The brunette admitted that she does not have any non-working time. The handsome man smiled. He asked if she needed help, for example, to get a warrant from the judge in this room. Kang-hee looked at the interlocutor in bewilderment. She turned to face the guy. She asked if it was really possible. The brunette looked down on her. He asked if she agreed to try. Kang-hee looked at her interlocutor suspiciously. She remained silent. The brunette asked what the girl would do if she received a warrant. Detective Zhu tensed up. She drew her eyebrows together. She asked what the young man wanted in return. Thoughts flashed through his head that if he even tried to start with the wedding, it would destroy him. The brunette stood smiling and crossed his arms over his chest. His posture radiated confidence. The young man spoke intriguingly about his desires. Kang-hee stared at her interlocutor with intense intensity. When the girl heard his wish, she froze in shock. The young man wanted one dinner from her. The detective asked again if he really only wanted dinner. The brunette laughed. Did she really think he would ask her to marry him again? The handsome man noted that he does not force people to do what they do not like. If she comes to him herself, then it will be a different matter. He pulled the door to the side. With a quiet sound, the door gave way and the young lady saw people sitting inside the room. The girl was taken aback by the surprise, because she had not had time to prepare herself mentally. She saw that Judge Kim and a young girl were sitting at the table. The man with noble gray hair was very displeased with Kang Hee's appearance. Irritation was evident on his face. A brunette followed the girl into the room. He greeted the judge. The adult man stared at the newcomer in surprise. Suddenly the judge's mood changed. His face lit up. The man was very happy to see your representative. The brunette smiled affably. He said words of apology for having to ask the judge for a favor as soon as he arrived here. I noticed that our lady detective was in a hurry to get a warrant. So could the judge grant it? The man scratched his face thoughtfully with his finger. He noticed that this could be solved without any problems. But why would someone like Ha-jun ask him about it? The brunette smiled and said that he was a fan of Detective Ju. The girl hid behind her savior. After his words, she was delighted. The young man's next phrase made the brunette go speechless with horror. She turned her head. The guy told the judge that he had recently proposed to Kang Hee. The girl looked around nervously. She looked closely at the decorations in the room. She realized that this place was special. The brunette was worried. She guessed that Judge Kim had prepared everything to introduce Ha-jun to his daughter. The lawman cleared his throat nervously. The man clearly hadn't expected this turn of events. Kang Hee cursed silently. The police car sped down the road, cutting through the air. Hyun-oh was delighted. As expected from their boss, she had done it again. The young man noted that it was a real headache. After all, although they had suspicions, there was no evidence. The employee asked the boss how everything was resolved. The girl was riding next to him in the passenger seat. The young miss folded her arms across her chest from tension. The suspect began to show affection for his wife. He was nice to her parents, with whom he had almost no contact. This looked suspicious. He had been communicating with his half-brother for several months. The crime scene was a closed house. The criminal was obvious. The interlocutor was amazed by her conclusions. They had a confession from his brother. Now they could catch the real criminal. With a warrant, they had nothing to worry about. The brunette exhaled nervously. Hyun-oh asked why she was sighing. Didn't she want to catch him? Trying to keep his eyes on the road, the boy glanced sideways at his boss. The brunette shrugged. She replied that she didn't even know if a young guy like him could understand that. The guy was dumbfounded and silent. Kang Hee admitted that she felt like she hadn't done her job well enough. The interviewer told her boss that she was terrible. The car rushed forward along the dark streets of the city. The engine roared. The headlights cut through the night gloom. The girl felt wildly uncomfortable. The low police station building towered above the trees. Flags on the roof fluttered in the wind. Banners and flags decorated the facade. There was a working atmosphere in the office. The employees were working intently at their computers. The young man approached the head of the department. He had come about issuing a warrant. He said that as expected, he came 3 days ago with an official statement. Kang Hee looked at him menacingly. She realized that he was on a deadline. The boss jumped up from her desk. It seemed she was about to boil. She told her subordinate that she was going to get some coffee. The phone rang. The girl answered. The interlocutor asked if it was time to congratulate her on becoming a bride. Kang Hee asked in surprise, "What bride?" She tried to find out from her interlocutor what they were talking about. She remembered that she even had a wedding photo thanks to her grandmother. But the girl could not get married. The newlywed in a wedding dress stood by the window. The heavy rain that poured from the sky. It was the same as Yoo Jin's tears. The lonely bride pressed her palm against the cold glass of the window. The prosecutor said that Judge Kim had instructed him to take care of the bride. The brunette snapped that it was none of his business. The man asked if they could get married. The girl blushed at the suggestion. She accused Choi Jin-hyuk of being crazy. So that's how he treated her. Laughter was heard. The girl reached for the coffee, shouted at the interlocutor, said that he had already stopped joking, otherwise she would hang up. The interlocutor asked to wait. He asked who it was. The girl froze at his question. The cup of coffee was steaming in her hands. Kang Hee did not understand what he was talking about. The prosecutor clarified that he was talking about the person the judge had summoned him for. Detective Ju responded that it was someone even crazier than him. The brunette's phone vibrated. On the smartphone screen, he saw the name of the caller. It was Ju Kang Hee. The young man's face broke into a smile. The guy was standing in a car park. He pressed the key fob and the car flashed its headlights. The girl said that if he had time, he could come over for dinner. The table was generously laid. A variety of Korean dishes pleased the eye. The aroma of spices hung in the air. The young people sat opposite each other. Brown-haired asked if they would be able to eat it all together. Kang-hee admitted that she could have done it alone. Ha-jun was surprised. He said that she did not gain weight no matter what she ate. The brunette admitted that she worked on her body. A dreamy smile blossomed on the young man's face. He admitted that he would like to do something with her too. Kang-hee glared. She apologized but admitted that she was tired of being a police officer who relied on him for help. The girl was extremely angry about this situation. The handsome man continued to smile. He said that this problem would be solved if the girl married him. He switched to the informal you with his interlocutor. Kang-hee didn't like it. She asked why they suddenly switched to you. The other person replied that they were the same age. Detective Ju frowned. She jumped up from the table. The chair moved noisily across the floor. The young man asked if the girl really didn't want to eat anymore. Kang-hee lost her appetite. The guy also stood up. He bowed. He was pleased to see how well she ate. The girl stopped the brunette with a wave of her hand. Detective Ju abruptly opened the door of the cafe they were in. She shouted goodbye to the guy and walked out into the street. The young man followed her. It seemed that the girl was not interested in marriage. He asked then who this prosecutor's bride was. Kang-hee turned her head in his direction. She asked if he was inquiring about her. The guy was walking next to the girl. He admitted that he overheard by accident. In that case, he already knew everything. The girl was very tired of him. Thanks to him, she felt like a slut who cheated on her with him. The interlocutor was surprised. What betrayal? Why did she talk about betrayal? He grinned vulgarly. He replied that they hadn't done anything yet. The handsome man stopped. He looked intently at his interlocutor. He asked if the girl had already fallen for him. The young people were standing in the middle of a busy street. The facades of the buildings were full of colorful signs. The young man asked where they could go. Since Kang-hee paid for dinner, the brunette had to buy coffee. The girl turned around and walked down the street. The guy stood there and watched her go. The detective stopped abruptly and turned around. She looked at Ha-jun, who was in no hurry to follow her. She asked why he didn't show his ring. The guy asked if he should talk about it, given the status of their relationship. He said dreamily that it would be possible if they were friends. Kang-hee sighed and thought. She agreed to his conditions. Now they were friends. She made him talk about why he didn't show her the ring. The young man grinned mysteriously. He accused his interlocutor of being obsessed with the ring. The girl disagreed with him. When was she obsessed with him? The guy reminded her that every time she looked only at his ring, and he at her face. The brunette looked at the guy suspiciously. She asked again why the young man was looking at her face. The interlocutor admitted that it happened instinctively. He thoughtfully scratched his chin. He did not take his gaze off the girl. Knowing that the handsome guy was looking at her all the time, the girl felt burdened. She asked him to suppress this instinct. The guy admitted that he could not. Kang-hee pointed at the boy. She said that it was the intellect that controlled the instinct. She insisted that this was what distinguished humans from animals. The brunette seemed to have no instincts, only a honed artificial intelligence. Ha-jun asked the girl to guess in honor of the beginning of their friendship. Was the brunette close to an animal who followed his instincts, or to a man who was guided by reason? The girl joined the game. She suggested, in honor of the beginning of their friendship, to tell who he looked more like, a person or an animal. The brunette admitted that he might have been offended if he had known from the very beginning that he was valuable only in this matter. The interlocutor asked if the girl knew that she looked cute. She replied that he was so cute that she wanted to raise him like a big dog. For Kang-hee, he was valuable for his face and ring. He reminded her of someone else. The brunette wanted to prove his worth and become her boyfriend. The girl said she would see. The young man followed Kang-hee. He asked when she had time. Unlike the brunette, she was working. Therefore, it was difficult for her to find time for him. Mr. Yu asked if the girl would like him to occupy her. Detective Ju asked him with displeasure what he had said. Maybe he's crazy. I forbade him to say anything weird to the judge again. The guy asked for some time. He wanted to know how he could be of help. Kang-hee put her hand on her hip. She agreed to listen to how he could be useful to her. The guy admitted that he had also succeeded in taking care of his body. The girl froze in shock. The handsome man took a few steps and came quite close to her. A sly grin was on his face. He decided that he could therefore now take up her body as well. The girl was taken aback by such a statement. Kang Hee looked at her interlocutor in amazement, her face red with embarrassment. The brunette nodded. He continued to smile. He asked how she was now. He hoped that she had almost given in. The girl shook with rage. Now she was red with anger and indignation. In the middle of the noisy, busy street, there was a dull thud and a muffled cry of pain. Kang Hee walked away. She apologized. She was no longer at the age to play with fire. The young lady was breathing heavily. It hurt the guy to step on her foot. The brunette was shaking. He asked if they would get married. It wouldn't be considered playing with fire. Although he didn't know which of the two would be more persistent. The guy shouted because she liked him too. If she couldn't admit it, he recommended that she listen to her instincts, which were definitely not lying. The girl looked back. She stared at her interlocutor. She thought that he was trying to seduce her again. The guy did not take his eyes off the brunette, pointed to the little finger with the ring, offered to call him. It would be better if next time she raised him to the level of her boyfriend. The girl gritted her teeth. She looked at the brunette with disdain. She was very angry. What a bastard. A few days later, the atmosphere at the bar was noisy. Yoon Jae-in, who had studied in Germany, was holding a party to celebrate her return to Korea. Kang Hee was also invited. Even though it wasn't a high school reunion, she felt uncomfortable. Someone said that Jae-in was getting married. There was a discussion of this news at the table. Someone had heard about it too. They asked where the culprit of this evening was. The girl appeared a moment later. The elegant blonde girl smiled and waved her hand to everyone. The guests greeted Jae-in in return. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. The girl was complimented. Although Ji-ying was getting married, it seemed that she had become even more beautiful. She politely thanked and beamed with pleasure. The guests were chatting with each other. Suddenly, the hostess's gaze fell on Kang Hee. She smiled happily. She sat down next to the brunette. She noted that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The detective confirmed it. They really hadn't seen each other for a long time. Ji-ying heard that the girl had been promoted to inspector. The brunette admitted that it wasn't all that great. The salary was low and she was always busy. The interlocutor said that she was proud that her classmate was a modest and capable detective. The brunette did not believe her sincerity. The words of the only granddaughter of a member of the National Assembly and an excellent violinist could not be genuine. Ji-ying apologized for leaving after saying so many nasty things. She was very sorry about it. She was not herself. Miss Ju gritted her teeth. She remembered how her interlocutor was sobbing and hysterical. She was screaming that Yu Jin had died because of her, that the girl should have died instead of him. Kang Hee lowered her head, said that it was all in the past, suggested not to worry about it. Ji-ying was happy. She asked if they were friends again then. The brunette was surprised. What do you mean again? They were never friends. Ji-ying asked if the girl would come to her wedding. The brunette answered, if she had time. Because of her work, she might not be able to. One of the invited friends interrupted the detective and asked Jae-in to tell everyone about her fiancé. She admitted that they were not engaged yet. One of her friends asked who he was and what he was like. Everyone stared at Ji-in. Everyone was curious to know more about her future groom. The girl said that their families knew each other well. The guy worked in Germany at Daimler Co., but now he has returned to Korea for business. His name was Yoo Ha-jun and he was a little famous. The brunette was stunned by this confession. She was surprised. She turned her head sharply towards her interlocutor. Ji-ying was smiling. A triumphant light was burning in her eyes. Detective Ju remained silent. Everyone was delighted by this news. Yoo Ha-jun was now more popular than any celebrity. Some claimed that he was just showing off. Ji-ying honestly admitted that the guy did not want to marry her. He said that marriage was a waste of time and burying the girl's talent. His family is very strict and conservative. He was looking for a docile wife. There were such girls who could sacrifice themselves for the family. Ji-ying giggled unpleasantly. It was clear that she thought that her former classmate was such a girl. Detective Ju glared at her interlocutor. She understood why she couldn't be close to Jae-ying. Ji-ying repeated that there were girls who could sacrifice themselves for the sake of the family. But she said that she could handle everything. She said that Ha-jun's family adored her, so he seemed to have changed his mind about marriage recently. Kang Hee was shocked. Didn't the brunette call her after everything because he hoped that everything would work out with Yoon Jae-in? A group of young people were sitting at tables drinking. They asked a classmate to invite Ha-jun. They all wanted to see him at least once. Zae-in would like to too, but he is very busy now. It has been so little time since he started his business. The brunette silently emptied her glass in one gulp. She slammed the empty dishes on the table. She shouted that he wasn't busy at all. Not even a little bit. Zae-in was surprised. How could she know about this? The brunette admitted that she had met him more than once. The classmate asked why she had met him. Kang Hee looked down on her interlocutor and admitted that the man her friend wanted to marry had also proposed to her. Everyone around started making noise. The guests were surprised by such words. Could the guy really have been dating two people at once? Kang Hee admitted that after hearing her classmate's story, she also became curious. The brunette smirked. With which of them was he truly sincere? Ji Ying gritted her teeth. Her hands shook with tension. She said that the detective had misunderstood everything. The girl smiled. She said that Ha Jong was not looking for a wife, but a woman who would devote herself entirely to her family. She hoped that the brunette understood what she meant. Kang Hee took out her phone and suggested that she call the brunette now and check. The classmate agreed. Each of them should send a message to the guy so that he comes here. For whom will the young man come? For Yoon Jae-in, the high school princess with an impressive background? Or for the sake of Ju Kang Hee, a reckless high school girl who was no match for the guys in a fist fight? Shouts came from all sides. Everyone was betting different amounts on Jae Ying. They thought the outcome was obvious. Detective Ju was angry. Ji Ying also took out her phone. She told her interlocutor that the brunette would not come for her. The detective accepted the call. They would look into it. Kang Hee sent a message to the young man asking him to come to Rio's store in Cheongdam. If they meet today, she will raise his level. An hour and a half had passed. Everything had been drunk and eaten. It looked like they had both been screwed. Would a man to whom a Hollywood actress confessed her love waste his time on them? Both girls sat very upset. Kang Hee was very ashamed. She thought about the ego this guy had. They made such bets. It was even a bit offensive. Suddenly there was a knock. The door opened. Everyone froze in amazement. The brunette entered the room and apologized. Both disputants were surprised. The guests were delighted. They wanted to get Yoo Ha-jun's autograph. Everyone dreamed of meeting him. Ji Ying beamed. She waved her hand to the guy in a friendly manner. She called him by name. The brunette sat tensely next to him. She was silent. The young man looked at both girls, said hello, glanced at the detective. The girl coughed nervously. The brunette asked permission to sit next to one of the invited girls. She nodded happily, stuttering. The young man sat down and stared at the brunette. He said her full name. The girl shuddered. The guy narrowed his eyes. In front of everyone, he very loudly admitted that he missed Ju Kang Hee. A lot. Jae Ying was taken aback. She froze in bewilderment. She stared at the brunette without taking her eyes off him. The guy asked the detective if he could get a promotion to her boyfriend today. He admitted that he only rushed here because of this message. Zae-in jumped up from her seat. She had warned the guy that it was a high school reunion. She asked the brunette to save her face. Ha-jun looked at the girl and explained that that was why he greeted her first, to save her face. Jae-in was nervous. The girl asked if it was true that the young man proposed to Ju Kang Hee. The brunette confirmed. The girl was in despair. She did not understand why he did it. After all, the brunette said that he did not want to get married. The handsome man grinned. He confirmed the truth of her words. Only that was before he met Ju Kang Hee, and now they met, and his opinion changed. The people around him were surprised that the brunette had chosen Detective Ju. Many were interested in what would happen to Jae-in now. She was going to get married. The classmate clenched her fists. She apologized to Kang Hee. She thought the brunette was lying. Bitter tears flowed from the girl's eyes. She really liked Ha-jun. That was probably why she was not herself. Was she really that bad? Suddenly the girl fell to her knees in front of the brunette, begged her to give up Ha-jun. The people around were shocked by what was happening. The girl claimed that her classmate had not forgotten Yoo-jin. The brunette looked at her friend in shock. A classmate reminded her that Detective Ju said she couldn't be with anyone but him, and she couldn't be with anyone but Ha-jun. Ji Ying continued to whine, sitting on the floor at the brunette's feet. The girl glanced at the cause of their discord. The guy folded his arms across his chest. He watched everything that was happening with cold indifference. Kang Hee turned to the young man. He won't be able to raise his level today. Otherwise, the brunette will look like a real bitch in the eyes of others. Ji Ying sat on the floor with her head down, and no one saw her sly, victorious smile. The girl jumped up abruptly, thanked the brunette, apologized, said that was all for today, decided that it was time for her to go. The door slammed behind the girl. Everyone present was shocked. They didn't understand what they should do next. Kang-hee also slowly rose from her seat. All the guests were looking at her. The girl decided that it was time for her to go too. The detective passed by Ha-jun. The brunette asked if she was really ready to give up so easily. The girl froze. The guy looked at Kang-hee temptingly. He slowly twisted the ring on his little finger. He reminded her that it seemed the brunette had a question about the ring. The girl walked past, leaving Ha-jun sitting where he was. Her silhouette disappeared into the doorway. Dim light fell on concrete walls. Two rivals met in an underground parking lot. Ji-ying chuckled. She asked what Detective Ju wanted. Did she really come out to apologize? Kang-hee didn't feel guilty about her classmate. She asked her to listen to her until the end. The girl needed to do everything possible to get Ha-jun. Kang-hee continued that the girl also needed to not let him go. This was the brunette's last favor as a friend. Ji-ying looked up in surprise and asked again what the brunette was talking about. Kang-hee admitted that she declared war on her classmate because she also had an interest in Yu Ha-ju. Ji-ying froze at these words. Anger flared in her eyes. Her jaw clenched in barely contained rage. The sound of a sharp slap sounded like a gunshot. The echo boomed through the parking lot, bouncing off the cold walls. A heavy tension hung in the air. Kang-hee grabbed her cheek. Did she really just get slapped? The girl screamed in rage. Harsh insults flew towards her rival. Ji-ying looked like a fury. Did the brunette really have an inferiority complex because of her? Why did she always pick on her boyfriends? Kang-hee was perplexed. It was even funny. She suggested that her classmate tell her what kind of her guys they were talking about now. Ji-in was shaking with anger and indignation. She blamed the brunette for everything. She said that if it weren't for her, then Yu-jin and Ha-jun. The girl no longer spoke. She screamed. She accused Kang-hee of always putting the brunette first. Ji-ying's voice rang with rage. She forbade him to even think about taking the brunette away from her. She threatened that otherwise she would never forgive her. Kang-hee warned her classmate in advance, so that she wouldn't try to take the brunette away from her. There was no answer. The rival only clenched her teeth. Suddenly, a strange man appeared in the parking lot. He asked who had called the driver. Ji-ying replied that it was she. The girl opened the car door and was about to get in, when she stopped for a second. She had something in mind. Looking at her rival, she decided to tell her something. She admitted that Ha-jun looked like Yu-jin. An unpleasant smile appeared on the classmate's face. She continued that if the brunette got involved with Detective Ju, he would be in danger. She told Kang-hee to remember this. The girl sat in the back seat, slamming the car door. She looked straight ahead. The brunette carefully touched her face. She screamed in pain. Her cheek was burning like fire. The girl was in great pain. She didn't understand why her cheek was burning so much. After all, Ji-ying's hand was so small. Suddenly, a cooling compress was applied to her burning face. How quickly the one that made the girl look like that came. The brunette stood nearby. He admitted that if he had known that Jae-in would raise his hand to her, he would have immediately intervened, even if it was inappropriate. Kang-hee was annoyed. She admitted that every time they met, her day went to hell. That's why she wasn't happy about their meetings. The girl continued to hold the ice to her cheek. She admitted that she was not happy with all of this at all. However, she understood that she would not be able to let him go. Grinning, the interlocutor asked what kind of habit she had, blaming others for her problems. He decided to take responsibility for that incident in the Japanese restaurant. But today's situation was entirely on her conscience. If the brunette couldn't just take responsibility for it, then she shouldn't have made a deal with him. Suddenly, delighted female voices were heard. Two girls met Kang-hee again. They asked why the brunette had not left. They were happy to see the brunette. They bombarded the guy with questions. Did he really come to the opera? They really wanted to see the car of their dreams. Ha-jong answered that he had taken a taxi today. His girlfriends asked him to go for a ride in his car at least once. They dreamed of having photos. They would have their first pictures in all of Korea. They suggested having a drink together. The brunette promised to do whatever they wanted, be it a trip to the opera or wine, provided that everything went well with him and Ju Kang-hee. The friends suddenly switched to the brunette. They called her a bitch. Did the girl really think that such cool men would be encountered at every step? They said it was better than winning the lottery. They said friends should help each other. Kang-hee watched this mess in silence. The brunette offered in exchange for her becoming a bitch. She guessed that the girls wanted to extract some benefit from Ha-jun. The friends hesitated. Kang Hee's gaze was full of determination. Her serious expression emphasized the tension of the moment. She recommended that the girls try their best. The brunette turned around and walked away with a confident gait. The girls looked after her in surprise. They were puzzled as to why she had left so suddenly. The girlfriends were discussing Kang Hee. They were talking about her temperament. She was always like that. The brunette heard their conversation, standing behind the girls. Kang Hee stood at the stairs. The silhouette cast shadows on the gray steps. A male voice said that it looked like the brunette had already become a bitch. She glanced over her shoulder and stared in confusion at Ha-jun, who had approached her. The young man asked if she couldn't just do it today. He meant to raise the level of their relationship. Kang Hee stood on the landing. She wondered why the brunette didn't shut up. Or did he want to get hit on the head again? She asked him to respect the boundaries when he addressed her informally or formally. He used you and you. The handsome man admitted that he addressed her informally only when they were alone. The girl remained silent. She only closed her eyes heavily. The young people walked silently, surrounded by the gloom of the evening. Their steps echoed loudly in the silence of the empty streets. Suddenly a man's hand reached out to the girl. The brunette carefully touched her hair. Kang Hee turned around abruptly. The guy froze in confusion with his hand outstretched. Detective Z was embarrassed. She asked in surprise if he had just touched her hair. The girl was confused. She suddenly switched to the informal you. Ha-jung smiled. The guy apologized, saying that the girl just looked like a Pomeranian. The brunette presented fluffy fur, short legs. Where was she in general similar? Did the guy really treat her like a pet? Ha-jung laughed cheerfully and sincerely. The girl admired him. His smile was crazy. She abruptly cut off his laughter. She forbade him to smile in her presence. She was beginning to get attached to him. Mr. Yu thought that such a ban was too much. The brunette said that the girl's friends understood the situation well. It was even better than the lottery. Maybe it was time to collect his winnings. Kang Hee stopped. She was really fed up with the guy. Had the brunette forgotten what she had said earlier? The day went wrong every time she met him. It was a failure. But it was not winning the lottery. Ha-jun asked what would happen if he made her believe in the lottery. The young man looked tenderly at the girl. He asked when she would skip this level increase and just marry him. The brunette flared up. Was the wedding really a joke for him? But the guy wasn't joking, especially about such important things as a wedding. He was a man of principle, and he was ready to take responsibility if he allowed the brunette to fall in love with him. The girl didn't understand why he was talking about falling in love. She needed to know the answer to this question to believe in his sincerity. The young people looked at each other in silence. The warm evening enveloped their figures in soft shadows. Ha-jun gently touched the girl's face. The reason was this. The girl clarified what he meant. He admitted that he was talking about the mole under her eye. He explained that she made his heart beat faster. Because of this, he could not tear his eyes away from the brunette. The brunette noticed that as soon as Kang Hee saw him, it seemed like she would scream at that very moment. That was why he couldn't take his eyes off her. The brunette thought he was being sincere with her. Ha-jung gently touched the face of his interlocutor. He looked at her intently. Their hearts beat wildly in their chests. The girl turned away abruptly. She shouted at Ha-jun to take his hands off her. She said that it was still too early for touching without permission. The girl's thoughts were racing like crazy. She didn't understand how she could say, "It's still too early." The brunette remembered that Ji-in had told her that if the guy got close to her, he would be in danger. She asked him what he thought that meant. Ha-jung thought about it. He chuckled softly. He replied that it was definitely not something that could be called good. The brunette folded her arms across her chest. She replied that this was precisely why they couldn't be together. She was sure that this relationship would not bring them anything good. The brunette thought about it. It turned out that as a girl, the brunette was a bad choice for him. But as a person, no. The detective looked at him in surprise. Since the guy believed that he was right about winning this lottery, they should not miss this chance under any circumstances. Kang Hee smiled intriguingly. It looked like she should have made a wish to the host of this lottery. The brunette admitted that the chief judge did not like her. The girl rarely listened to her superiors and most often did as she saw fit. The first anti-crime team could boast of many incidents. Among them were many cases related to politics. Not once was justice restored to Kang Hee. There were dozens of cases of unfair interference by the judge in the trial. Detective Ju dreamed of a big scandal that would help remove the judge from office. It wasn't just a judge, but the supreme judge. The brunette understood that until the current judicial power changed, nothing would change. She would fulfill her promise only if the situation changed. Kang Hee asked the man to show off his abilities. It was curious how this proud man would cope with such an impossible request. The brunette smiled sweetly. She found her interlocutor very attractive, so much so that even the prosecutor's fiancé succumbed to his charms. So, as long as Ha-jun could change something in this system, she would raise his level. She hoped that maybe this would cool down a little. The young woman was satisfied with even the ghostly feeling of pleasure, if she could see and feel Yu-jin in the brunette. The massive police station building sat along a busy street. A patrol car stood at the entrance. The phone was silent. Kang Hee held the smartphone in her hands. The guy didn't even call her. Was it because her wish was so complicated? The brunette was sitting in the police car. She was sad looking at the phone screen. It was not funny at all. Suddenly, the driver's side door opened and Hyun-oh turned to the boss with joyful cries. The subordinate was excited. He asked if the boss had heard the awesome news. The brunette asked again what he was talking about. The guy held out a tablet. It said breaking news. Manipulation in the trial involving Supreme Judge Kim Jae-jong. Kang Hee stared wide-eyed at the information that was released. She was shocked. Hyun-oh remembered what the detective had said about the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court being a problem. He needed to pay close attention to the news. The guy was delighted with the boss. The girl nodded her head and read the article. She admitted that she said it as a joke. The subordinate did not believe it. Kang Hee muttered about the hacked data. If there was such a cool skill, then it would be possible to hack more. She was surprised by the heightened sense of justice. The girl wondered if it was worth changing the dirty headline at such a time. The interlocutor listened to her mutterings. Suddenly, Hyun-oh was left alone in the car. The brunette said that she needed to go out to make a phone call. The car door slammed behind the girl. China. The skyscrapers of Beijing jutted into the gray sky with sharp edges, glass and metal merging into geometric patterns against the city haze. Tenten CEO Ko noted that Representative Yu only proposed the collaboration because he considered himself the Midas touch of the design world. He was a little disappointed by this. Perhaps it was because the man was judging from the outside and did not fully understand the whole point. The iPhone made Ha-jun a household name. The brunette asked why Daimler co-hired him, a man who designs mobile phones. The guy suggested looking at the top-selling products in the home shopping market. They were fancy. Ju Wing noted their short lifespan. The brunette beamed. He was sure that this was why sales were unstable, and demand among buyers was falling. The CEO winced in surprise. Was this the reason Tenten came up with its own brand? Ha-jun believed that instead of elaborate designs that quickly become boring, it was more important to meet consumer needs with simple designs. Mr. Wang Ju-win thought about it. He looked at the young man. He said that he was too self-confident. Ha-jun replied that there was no reason to be arrogant, but there was no reason not to be confident either. The CEO clapped his hands enthusiastically. It was true what they said. Ha-jun was not only good at his job but also full of charm. Everyone who was present at this meeting stood up and also applauded the young man. They were delighted with the guy's presentation. People were leaving the meeting room. Many were exchanging impressions. There was noise in the corridor. Mr. Wang honestly admitted that the cooperation proposal had already been signed. He wanted to hear the guy out. He suggested having dinner next week. His daughter was a fan of the young man, and she begged her father to organize their meeting. He admitted that he would like a son-in-law in the person of the guy. The brunette smiled politely, thanked for the offer, admitted that he had to refuse. The interlocutor was surprised. He clarified the reason for the refusal. Ha-jong said that he had a girlfriend, and he had already proposed to her and was waiting for an answer. Mr. Wang Ju-win asked if there was a chance that the young man would think about his proposal if the girl refused. The brunette didn't think he could give up. He admitted that he would keep trying until his girlfriend agreed. The men shook hands. The CEO of Tenten admitted that it hadn't been easy, but what could he do? A young man walked out of the modern office building of Tenten. He needed to make an urgent call. Ha-jun didn't have time to dial the number before his smartphone rang. The guy looked at the phone screen, smiled, answered the call. The brunette said hello. The woman asked where he was now. Ha-jong replied that he was in Beijing. Kang Hee flared up. She asked if the guy had really gone crazy. The brunette didn't understand what she was talking about. The girl asked about the supreme judge. The guy understood what was being said. Kang Hee was confused as to what it meant. She was talking about serious things here and he was answering her so casually. Ha Jin asked if it was a fact or not. The girl stared blankly into space. The brunette meant leveling up. Detective Zhu admitted that she had something to tell the guy. If he wasn't embarrassed, she would raise his level right away. She asked if they could meet today. Then she remembered that the guy was in Beijing. Ha Jun replied that they could meet. The girl, puzzled, reminded him that he was in Beijing. The brunette confirmed his location. But if she wanted to meet, he was ready to come. He noticed that today was their first day. He promised to come as soon as possible. He asked her to be patient, even if the girl missed him too much. The interlocutor flared up. Had he really gone completely crazy? The body was covered with goosebumps. The girl asked if the brunette had eaten something wrong. She asked not to say that the brunette was a fan of chicken meat. Ha Jung laughed cheerfully. The girl frowned. She asked what made him laugh so much. The young man promised that he would come today. Therefore, he asked to break with the prosecutor before his arrival. The girl had nothing to tear apart. Kang Hee said that the prosecutor was never her real fiancé. The brunette did not need problems in the form of her fiancé. The interlocutor was delighted. He asked the girl to send him her address. Ha Jung decided to come to her house. After all, the girl wanted to talk about something. Kang Hee suspected that the guy was trying to find out her address. She didn't allow him to come to her house. She asked him to call when he returned to the city. Ha Zi said that he would be back late at night. But the detective had no plans to go home, as she had been working until the morning. So he had no reason to come to her. The interlocutor was silent. Just in case, the girl asked the guy not to feel guilty in front of her. She came up with a plausible excuse. If she sacrificed herself, her team would be able to go home early. She still had time and energy left for that. Kang Hee couldn't sleep peacefully at home. The girl was so tired. But she didn't want the brunette to know about it. If the handsome man only found out how much Shin Yu-jin's existence had affected her, he would immediately discover her weakness. The young man asked Ju Kang Hee a question. He asked if the girl really wasn't going to marry him. Detective Ju answered without hesitation that it wasn't that she wasn't going to. The brunette didn't care. The brunette stood on a noisy street in Beijing. He promised to change her mind. He noticed that sooner or later the girl would marry him. Kang Hee smiled defiantly. She replied that she would watch some more. The brunette admitted that she didn't even know how many impossible wishes she could make. Ha Jun's family home had a traditional look. Wooden beams and columns supported a massive roof. Its curved edges reached up to the blue sky. A stream of golden hot tea filled the cup. Kap-Su thought that all this was taking too long, and the wedding itself was still ahead. The older members of the family gathered for tea. If the bride viewing was going on now, it should be over soon. Myung-hee, the brunette's grandmother, reminded that her grandson had said that he was going to get married. The woman hoped that it would happen very soon. Suddenly, she was interrupted by a loud sound. Myung-hee shuddered in fear. Her husband hit the table hard. The man was abrupt and trembled with anger. The grandson had a difficult character. Was he not smart or skillful enough? He considered his character good. And he wasn't just saying that because the guy was his grandson. He was a good man. No matter how you looked at it, he could have had his pick of any woman. His wife sipped hot tea in silence. She thought the problem was that their grandson was too perfect. The man cried out, turning to the boy's mother. Asked her to tell him that he didn't look worried enough. Okay, Hai tried to be careful. The woman asked them to believe in Ha Jun. She said that her son had not lied. She was sure that they knew it better than she did. The man agreed. He could say with confidence, without a twinge of conscience, that he really knew better than Okay-hee. The woman heard the sound of the message. She was glad that it was from her son. Kap-Su noted that she cared about the brunette so much because she was his mother. The old man reminded her that she also needed to take care of herself as an important part of Ha-jun. The woman smiled. She promised to try. The head of the family asked about the message. Okay, he suggested that she see it herself. The son was going to meet his girlfriend. He promised to stay at their house. The family sat around a low table drinking tea. They wondered what kind of a nice girl this guy was trying to get. And what should they do in the meantime? The streetlights cast a dim light on the steps of the police station. The silence of the night was broken only by the rustling of leaves in the darkness of the parking lot. The keys tapped out a rhythm in the quiet office. A group of people watched the young woman working absent-mindedly. The subordinates didn't understand what was wrong with their boss today. It seemed like she had a lot to think about today. One of the guys asked what was wrong with her last time because he was worried. They ended up spending the night there. The staff didn't want to get into trouble this time. Kang-hee was sure that she was a predator, fearlessly attacking and biting. It was unclear why she turned into a herbivorous rabbit next to Ha-jun. The girl's eyes widened. A sudden realization entered her mind. Why was everything like this? Kang-hee screamed loudly. The subordinates suddenly jumped up. They turned their attention to her. She scared them. Maybe today they should have spoken out directly and let it be. Sunbae supported the idea, but his 3-year-old son, every time he came back from work, said, "Welcome home," as if the man were a guest. The mobile phone on the table next to the girl vibrated. There was an incoming call. The brunette shuddered in surprise. The subordinates tensed up. They were surprised that the call was made at such a time. Could their salvation have come? The girl answered. She said with displeasure that she had asked to call. She asked why the person had come all the way here. The employees were watching. The brunette forbade parking here. There was a paid parking lot in the alley next to the restaurant. Let him wait there. The men watched the boss in shock. Kang-hee stood up from her workplace. She began to put on her jacket. She looked at her subordinates who had fallen silent in surprise. She asked why everyone was still at work. The guys were puzzled. They looked at their boss in silence. The brunette turned around, stopped. She felt awkward under the intense gaze. The girl sat down and looked in the mirror to see how she looked. The girl straightened up and silently left the room. The employees did not understand what it was. My God, their boss looked in the mirror. Looks like tomorrow the sun will rise in the east. The interlocutor was corrected. He definitely meant to say, in the west. Sunbae asked if the boss really had someone. The answer was obvious. It was definitely a guy. This news was enough to drive you crazy. And it looked like it wasn't Prosecutor Choi. The employees decided that they had to protect their boss. After all, the parking lot was next to the restaurant. Sunbae didn't understand why this was necessary, but everyone moved forward. Bright lanterns illuminated the small building in the silence of the night. The windows of the neighboring houses flickered in the darkness. The road surface reflected the glare of the lanterns. The black silhouette of the luxury car stood out in the darkness. Headlights cut through the darkness. Kang-hee said the prosecutor's office and police were in a panic. This was important, of course. The girl wanted to find this hacker. Since the brunette was already here, she decided to ask him something. She asked if it was the brunette who paid him. The guy grinned. It seemed that the interlocutor had already decided that it was him. Kang-hee looked at him in surprise and asked if that meant it wasn't him. Ha-jun asked if she really thought that. The brunette admitted that she really hoped it wasn't him. She thought it was all crazy. Ha-jung asked why she thought so. The brunette was surprised. Did the guy really not understand? If he was caught, it would be the end for him. And for his family. The interlocutor grinned. So that's it? He turned to Ju Kang-hee, but the girl interrupted him. Did you, Ha-jun, really not understand anything? He couldn't pretend that all this wasn't serious for him. All this could drive him crazy. The guy admitted that now the girl's look and her reaction looked as if she was a wife who was worried about her husband. Ha-jung extended his hand to the girl. Of course the brunette didn't know, but this was her strange birthmark. The brunette looked tenderly into the girl's eyes. He didn't believe that she was worried about him. Ha-jun gently touched the girl's face. Before being caught, he asked her to play the role of a lover well. He understood perfectly well that he was going crazy. Ha-jun was willing to do anything to get such a beautiful girl, even if that happiness would be short-lived. The young man had said earlier that he was guided by instinct, not reason. Ha-jun gently touched the girl's face with his hand. Kang-hee abruptly pulled the guy's hand away. She asked him what if she was worried about something. She asked if he could tell her the truth. The brunette asked what she wanted to know. Kang-hee held his hand, asking about the hacker, how much he paid him. The guy asked again if it was that important. This was extremely important to Detective Ju. The more the hacker cost the brunette, the better. In this case, he had less chance of being caught. Kang-hee promised that she would keep her mouth shut even if she was caught. The other person looked down. He took his hand away. He didn't understand how the detective could pretend not to know the criminal. If the brunette was sure he did it, she could simply turn him in. Kang-hee looked up at the guy. Was he really serious about saying that? She stared at him blankly. Ha-jun noted that if he was arrested, the girl would be able to visit him and admire his face. The brunette leaned towards the girl. He said that she could admire the face, so similar to Shi Yu-jin. Couldn't she just look at his face? This is the only thing the young lady wanted from him. The girl was surprised by such words. Suddenly, the brunette heard the crunch of branches and muffled whispering from the bushes behind her. Kang Hee tensed up. Detective Ju grabbed the boy's arm. She yelled at him to run after her, and they ran out of the illuminated parking lot. The young men hid around the corner in the shadow of the building. The girl put her finger to her lips. She signaled that they should be quieter. Ha Zhang noticed that if the girl hid him, she would become an accomplice. The brunette asked him to shut up. Her head was already hurting from his chatter. The guy asked her why her head hurt. They looked at each other. The girl was surprised. Did he seriously not know the reason? Ha Jun grinned. How he liked all this. The young man admitted that he would never hire a hacker. He didn't have time to waste his money so uselessly. It turned out that it wasn't he who had arranged all this. The girl doubted it. Kang Hee looked at the other person with a searching gaze. It turned out that it was just a coincidence. The guy said that he told her the truth. But the brunette will have to make any decisions herself. The young people stood close to each other. The brunette asked not to breathe so hard. He literally felt the girl touching him with her chest. Kang Hee immediately jumped back a decent distance from her interlocutor. She coughed in embarrassment. The brunette sighed in disappointment. Kang Hee blushed. The girl felt constrained. The brunette saw someone different in Ha Jun. His ring was similar to the one worn by the only person she could love, for the first and last time. The brunette wondered if that was the only reason. The girl looked up at her interlocutor in surprise. The guy admitted that he already knew about it. Kang Hee was taken aback. She asked if it didn't hurt his pride. The brunette replied in the negative. He was still standing before her eyes. If the brunette wanted to see someone else in him, then he was not against it. Was this really her most impossible desire? The young man reached out his hand to the girl's. Their fingers intertwined. Was he really going to become the incarnation of someone else? The brunette admitted that he was ready to do whatever the girl wanted. Kang Hee was so surprised that she couldn't utter a word. The young man brought the brunette's hand to his lips, touched it gently, asked Ju Kang Hee to answer, to celebrate the beginning of their relationship. Kang Hee's dark eyes were filled with curiosity. Long strands of hair framed her face. The brunette asked how far the girl would let him go today. It was the confidence with which he could erase that man from her life. The man's hot lips gently touched the brunette's hand. A loud slap broke the charm of the moment. Kang Hee took her hand away. She said that today they would limit themselves to just hands. The young man laughed. The girl asked him to take a step back, as was proper for decent people. The detective felt that her wish hurt Ha Jun's pride. The guy admitted that the detective might be right. He kept his thoughtful gaze on the brunette. Kang Hee admitted that a man who was going to be the embodiment of someone else would hardly be hurt. The brunette had nothing like that. The guy admitted that the impossibility of getting what he wanted hurt his pride, but increasing his level could save his pride. He still had some pride left, but it was only a matter of time. The girl began to think about marriage. She realized that they had to get married. The guy didn't take his eyes off his interlocutor. Kang Hee extended her hand to the brunette. She exhaled nervously. She said that they were dating now, and it was a little funny counting the days at that age. But today was their first day, so if the guy is confident, then you can try. The girl took a few steps and approached the young man. Kang Hee grabbed the guy by the tie and pulled him towards her. She remembered her first love, who died. The girl buried her forehead in Ha Jun's chest, pressed herself against him, asked him to erase that love from her memory. She raised her eyes and promised that if the brunette could do it, they would get married. The young man shuddered at these words. A self-confident grin appeared on the young man's lips. If the brunette wanted it that way, he would do it with pleasure. Kang Hee was incredibly pleased with his confidence. She looked at him carefully and smiled encouragingly. Ha Jin kept looking at the girl's lips, wondering if she had any lip gloss on. The brunette's cheeks turned pink from embarrassment. Did he really want to try? The man's fingers gently touched the girl's face. Kang Hee said that today the guy could only use his hands. If he didn't like it, he could say so. The brunette leaned towards the girl. He didn't want to seem rude or pushy. The guy moved even closer and quietly whispered in her ear that if the girl didn't like it, she could stop it. Ha Jong gently touched the girl's face. The brunette's whole body trembled from the emotions that overwhelmed her. She closed her eyes. Things were bad. The young man thought he would do it after all. His breath burned her skin. He became 1 centimeter closer. The clatter of several feet suddenly broke the magical moment. The group of men had already turned the corner, but no one was in sight. Maybe they should just leave. The girl suddenly froze in fear. Her eyes widened in understanding of the situation. It was her subordinates who were looking for her. Sunbae was worried that some animal would eat their boss. They disagreed. They doubted that their boss could be caught and eaten by an animal. The detective's colleagues knew that their boss could not be eaten. Kang Hee was thinking that she was about to be eaten. But they interrupted them. The subordinates remembered everything they had seen. How their boss looked in the mirror and put on lipstick. The girl blushed and let out a quiet gasp from what she had heard. Hyun-oh saw it for the first time in 5 years of working together. They disagreed. The others didn't see any lipstick. He seemed to be looking more closely. Kang Hee began to justify herself to the brunette. She said that it was an exaggeration. It wasn't lipstick, it was just a lip balm. Hyun-oh insisted that the lipstick was so red it looked like it was stained with something. The detective got furious. She thought her subordinate was an asshole. She pointed at her lips. It wasn't red but light pink. She insisted that the guy look. Ha Jong stared at her lips without looking away. The brunette covered his mouth with his hand. He tried not to make a sound. It was enough to drive you crazy. The guy really was ready to eat his interlocutor. Hyun-oh wondered how it was possible that such a perfect person like their boss had such low standards. After all, men knew other men's thoughts. That was it. The subordinate suddenly thought that it was the guy who had been staring at him outside the hotel. It shouldn't have happened this way. Hyun-oh decided to call her right away. His friends tried to talk him out of it. They tried to stop him. It was too much. The silence of the night was broken by a loud ringing phone. Hyun-oh noted that it was their boss's ringtone. It seemed like she was somewhere nearby. Kang Hee let out a confused yelp. Her mobile phone was vibrating and ringing loudly in her hands. She scolded herself for not turning off the sound. The girl reacted instantly. She pressed a couple of buttons on her smartphone and turned on silent mode. She suggested to the brunette that they break up now. Meet later, they could talk next time. Ha Jung was stubborn. What if he didn't want to let her go? The brunette stared at her interlocutor in surprise. She admitted that she had to leave. She apologized to the guy for this. The young man exhaled heavily. He couldn't bear to think about the girl leaving now. Kang Hee was surprised by his reaction. It was already quite late, and her team members wouldn't leave her alone. The brunette would feel better if she at least treated them. The young man agreed with this argument. Kang Hee, with a smile on her lips, sincerely thanked her interlocutor for understanding. Suddenly, the brunette grabbed her hand. Her heart was pounding in her chest with furious force. He pulled me close and hugged me tightly from behind. It was so unusual and so exciting. They stood silently, listening to each other's heartbeats. The young man did not break his embrace. They were a couple now, and this physical contact was no longer considered frivolous. The girl blushed from embarrassment and from the realization of what was happening. Ha Jong pressed himself against the brunette's cheek. He asked if 1 hour would be enough for them to have dinner. The detective answered that it would be enough. The guy promised to wait for her. Kang Hee tensed up. She wanted to object. The brunette whispered in her ear to call him when she was done. Nam forgot a moment Kang Hee. The young man's closeness to her grew in direct proportion to her attempts to keep him at a distance. He held the girl close to him as tightly as she tried to keep him away. And now the brunette took as much as she was ready to give him. The brunette was in a strong male embrace. She was dating a man who adhered to such rules. She promised to call after dinner. Detective Ji came out of her hiding place with a calm expression. She asked Kim Hyun, if he had been following her. The men started talking happily at once. Kang Hee walked away from the place where she and the brunette were hiding. The subordinates asked where she had been. The girl replied that they didn't need to know. Hyun-oh knew there was someone else around the corner. He suspected it was the baby beast that had taken notice of the girl. The police officer had been looking for it for a long time. The cafe's windows glowed welcomingly in the darkness of the night. The name was loudly speaking. The best soup for a hangover. On the table opposite the girl stood an upside-down glass. The subordinates noticed this. They noticed that their boss hadn't been drinking, so they were sure that the man was hiding somewhere nearby. They asked to call him. They wanted to meet him. Sunbae suggested that they take a look at the man who made their boss preen. Hyun-oh was worried. He wanted to know if they were still just talking or if they had already started dating. The boss grumbled discontentedly. What did it matter to them whether she was dating someone or not? Everyone was indignant. Their team was a family. Isn't that what she told them? Kang Hee brought up something more important. 20 years ago, a gambling fraud case had been opened. Her team didn't want to talk about work again. The girl snapped at them to shut up. This was important. Everything had to be done properly. The city lights flickered in the darkness, casting a soft glow over the nightscape. The sound of someone's heavy breathing could be heard in the stillness of the night. Kyung-hee's hurried footsteps merged with her ragged breathing in the silence of the night. The brunette ran because she was late. It had been an hour and a half since she had realized this, and she still had 15 minutes to walk to where Ha-jun was. 7 minutes if she ran. Kyung-hee didn't even know why she ran. She just didn't think she had to make him wait. Just like she didn't like apologizing to the families of the victims. The girl ran up to the brunette, breathing heavily. She was a little late. A hoarse breath came out of her mouth. Ha-jung calmly replied that it was okay. The brunette peered into the face of her interlocutor. She admitted that she could not promise that she would not be late in the future. Ha-jun assured her that everything was fine. All she had to do was come to him like this. The young man looked up at the night sky and said thoughtfully that it was a special night. Kyung-hee objected. She looked up too. She noted the starless sky. And it was night. Just an ordinary night. The handsome man did not agree with his interlocutor. He sincerely admitted that this night was important for him. The guy smiled charmingly and remarked that it was their first night together. His confession shocked Kyung-hee. Detective Zhu looked at her interlocutor in confusion. The words about their night together were beating like an alarm in her head. Memory helpfully reminded me how the brunette with a satisfied look admitted that he had also succeeded in taking care of his body. Therefore, he could now take care of hers too. Detective Zhu blushed. Adult images appeared in her head. The girl exhaled nervously. She remembered the words about the young man succeeding in... She didn't have time to finish her thought. The guy leaned closer and asked what they could do. Kyung-hee exhaled nervously. Different thoughts flashed through her head. The girl looked at her interlocutor warily. Her whole face flushed. The brunette was embarrassed and silent. The young man assumed a proud pose. His whole appearance radiated confidence. It was obvious to her that these were unambiguous attempts at seduction. Kyung-hee asked sheepishly if the brunette really wanted her to invite him to the hotel. The guy giggled. He asked if she really wanted to go to the hotel. The brunette was indignant. Of course she didn't want that. Ha-jung admitted that he didn't have such plans for her today. It was a special day. Their first day. The brunette had never been in a relationship before. He thought they could do what the girl wanted. Kyung-hee laughed nervously. She waved her hand at herself. She wondered if she had really fallen for the tricks of this depraved demon. And this whole atmosphere. First, she decided to tidy up the guy. The girl grabbed the guy by the lapels of his jacket. She suspected that the problem was in his suit. Suddenly she froze. A shudder ran through her body. Detective Zhu was embarrassed and looked down. An untied tie hung around the young man's neck. The girl took both ends in her hands. She wondered how to tie a tie. She became embarrassed and turned away from the guy. She patted him on his muscular chest and asked the brunette to simply tie his tie. Ha-jung grabbed her hands and squeezed them in his palms. He looked the girl intently in the eyes. He did not agree with this. He asked her to tie it herself. The blush never left the girl's cheeks. She admitted that she didn't know how, because she didn't have anyone who wore ties. The brunette noticed that designers preferred original things. The same was true for relationships. It always turned out differently, depending on the person. Suggested that she could try to remake him, starting with his tie. Considering that he had become her man, Kyung-hee thought about his proposal for a moment. She asked him what kind of ties he wore. She didn't even know that. The young man suggested that she listen carefully and remember. The brunette was ready to tell her everything. Ha-jin thought that the girl should do this more often. He watched her embarrassment with a smile. He reminded her that this was a message about her and him. They can spend countless nights together. He suggested making one side of the tie longer and tying it around the other end once. It is necessary to pass one end through the resulting hole. The guy said that wearing a tie itself was not a theory. He patiently guided me through each step. In the end, he said to tie a knot. Kyung-hee succeeded. It really left an unforgettable mark. The girl pressed her hands to her chest in excitement. She thought that perhaps this made her heart beat even harder than when kissing. If they had kissed, her heart would have exploded. The brunette doubted that dating this man would really be normal. Kyung-hee swallowed nervously. The detective kept her gaze fixed on the other man. She wondered if she could handle this. A single lantern illuminated the space of the night. The girl suggested in that case to go for a drink in honor of their first day. She offered a choice of soju, liqueur, beer, wine. She wasn't picky about alcohol. She understood that alcohol was the best way to ease the tension. The interlocutor frowned. He did not support her plan. He suggested doing something else. The girl's eyebrows rose in surprise. Why did he answer like that? The brunette couldn't believe that he refused to drink. Without taking his eyes off his girlfriend, Ha-jin said that he hadn't been drinking, and he had no plans to start. The brunette didn't believe it. She laughed and asked the man to stop joking. The young man answered seriously that he wasn't joking. The girl thought about it. She asked what he could say about smoking. It didn't seem like he was lying. Ha-jin was brief. He said that he didn't smoke. The brunette expected some kind of reaction from his girlfriend. Kang-hee looked at her interlocutor and thought that she had never met such a right man, which at the same time looked too bold. The girl giggled nervously. After all, they had nothing else to do except drink. She wondered what to do. Suddenly, an interesting idea came to her. She needed to eat. She asked what Ha-jun wanted to eat. She knew a place where the food was great. The brunette admitted quite seriously that he had not eaten after 6 in the evening for 10 years. The girl was disappointed. She wondered what they should do then. She made another suggestion. If the young man didn't mind, we could take a walk near the police station. Detective Zhu thought he was okay with it. Walking. It was useful and easy. The girl admitted that there were many interesting places here. The guy once said that he liked everything unusual. There were picturesque and quiet places here. The brunette was silent. He watched his interlocutor closely. The girl began to get nervous. Why didn't he answer? She didn't understand whether he liked the offer or not. She irritably noted that if he didn't want to, then let him say so. The young man agreed to go for a walk, but only if they held hands. Ha-jun asked if the girl was against it. Detective Zhu answered without hesitation that she was not against it. The guy's warm, strong palm slid over the girl's hand. Their fingers intertwined. Kang-hee continued to blush. The young man smiled with satisfaction. He agreed. A walk was a walk. He pulled his girlfriend along with him. The blissful smile never left the guy's face. The detective walked behind her man. They held hands. Kang-hee's heart was beating desperately in her chest. Young people were walking around the city at night. The windows of high-rise buildings were brightly lit. Flower pots lined the paths. Kang-hee pointed to a blood sausage soup restaurant across the street. She suggested that they go there next time, at her expense. It was delicious. Suddenly, the brunette laughed merrily. She remembered how they had lunch there once, and a man who was wanted came in. They walked step by step. The girl considered it fearlessness. She couldn't believe that the man had come to the restaurant next to the police department to eat. 10 steps later, the interlocutor pointed to houses visible in the distance. She said that at night they looked quite picturesque. Some crossroads here converged at one point. If the criminal escaped, you could catch him even if you were the first to reach the other end of the road. 50 steps later, the young man's hand gently clasped Detective Zhu's hand. The handsome man looked at the girl intently and smiled mysteriously. He enjoyed the walk and the closeness of his girlfriend. The full moon shone majestically in the night sky among the rare clouds and stars. It was already 12 o'clock. The car horn broke the silence of the night. The bright headlights of a car cut through the darkness of the night. A loud, sharp horn echoed down the street of Yeonhee-dong. Many different cars, one after another rustling their tires, drove through the gates onto private property. The dear guests were warmly welcomed by Ha-jun's mother, Ok-hai. The woman in traditional Korean attire smiled warmly and said, "Welcome." The sound of many footsteps filled the space. Guests were invited to come inside. Men bowed politely to the woman who greeted them. Every midnight on the last day of the month, regular meetings of high-ranking officials in the political and business world took place. In the center of the room, waiting for the meeting to begin, sat Ha-jun's grandfather, Kap-soo. He greeted all the guests. These meetings were led for a long time by the Yu family. The meetings were always solemn and strictly confidential. We discussed the current situation with Chief Justice Kim. The public's focus on him was a challenge for everyone present. The crowd wanted to catch the hacker and find out who was behind him. The difficulty was that from time to time the police refused to issue a warrant. The men argued. This case had already spread everywhere. Some doubted whether they would refuse after such a warrant had been issued. It was doubted that people were capable of understanding this. One of those present was waiting for an order as to what he was to do. The head of the presidential administration reported that they received an order regarding the VIP. First of all, to catch the person who was behind this. A deathly silence fell over the wood-paneled room. The serious men stared at the speaker. Was the VIP planning to get rid of his subordinate? It wasn't just one person. Could it be that he was planning to cut off the entire branch? One of the guests hoped for their understanding. He hinted at what might happen if Judge Kim were arrested. Many people would be involved. I asked how they would deal with this. The head of the presidential administration frowned. He recalled that there were many former Supreme Court chairmen, but they could not cope with just one of them. He suggested putting everything on the line and making a statement that the leaked documents were not true. The man adjusted his glasses and said that, if necessary, they had a way to prevent the witnesses from showing up. They had every opportunity to stall for time. Everyone present began to whisper again. They agreed with the previous speaker. They decided that firstly, they needed time to calm people down. Kap-soo looked at the assembled group intently. He paid attention to the dishes in front of them. He explained that it was abalone and croaker in marinade. He suggested that the men take one portion each with them when they left. The host of the meeting winked at those present and asked if it was true that his wife's culinary skills had improved. The meeting ended. The men began to disperse. They put on their shoes on the threshold of the house. The head of the presidential administration bowed politely. He apologized for always causing inconvenience to the head of the family. Kap-soo, on the contrary, was grateful that the interlocutor came every time the feeble old man called. The guest feigned surprise at the words of the head of the Yu family. Ha-jun's grandfather looked at the guest in surprise. He asked the head of the presidential administration if he wanted anything else. The guest said that Mr. VIP wanted to show concern for his grandson. When he has time, he would like to have dinner together, inviting his granddaughter as well. Kap-soo turned his head and looked closely at the speaker. He asked him to convey that his concern in words was enough for him. The head of the Yu family noticed his daughter in the hallway, who came out to them. He made a sign to her. The woman handed the head of the presidential administration a beautifully wrapped package. An old acquaintance from Gangwon-do had sent 3 ginseng roots. The man was excited and surprised. It was a real treasure. Kap-soo told him to take it and not to be shy. After all, the guest worked so hard. I noticed that the interlocutor looked very pale when he spoke on television. These words made the head of the presidential administration look at the interlocutor. Mung-hee stood in the hall where the meeting was taking place. She was glad that the meeting time had changed, and instead of food, there was now a snack. Her daughter thought so too. The women began to clear the table. The head of the family was thinking about something intensely. He sighed and was visibly worried. Men-hee noticed her husband's behavior and asked her husband what had happened. Kap-soo flared up. He didn't understand something. He guessed that the guy was trying to blind Ha-jun with his granddaughters. His wife asked him what he said to that. The head of the family replied that he had done the right thing and politely refused. His wife supported him. She believed that he had done the right thing. And that was wonderful. Kap-soo nodded his head. He noted that politicians were to be avoided even more than businessmen. Ha-jun's grandmother thought about it. The woman was worried about whether their grandson would be able to choose a bride in such a hurry. The head of the Yu family was convinced that their grandson was a witty guy, very friendly and kind. He was sure that he would be able to choose a strong and skillful bride. At that moment, a couple was pushing a cart from behind. The guys came to the aid of the gray-haired woman. The lights of the city shimmered in the night haze, casting a soft glow over the streets. The windows of the houses glowed with a warm light, creating a peaceful picture of the night's peace. The woman handed him the juice. She asked him to drink it and only then work. She admitted that she would always be grateful to them whenever they met. The old lady didn't know that detectives could be so sweet and kind. She told Ha-jun that he had real gold in his hands. The woman advised the brunette not to miss this girl. She added that they looked good. Very good even. After these words, the old lady walked away. The young men watched her go. Detective Ju advised the woman to be careful. The echoing sounds of 2 people's footsteps broke the silence of the night. Their silhouettes moved along the streets of the night city side by side in complete silence. Ha-jong looked at his friend. He noticed that the brunette had dirty her hands. He suggested saying that it was a little support. The brunette asked if it was necessary to open all the waste paper to get her hands so dirty. The girl replied that she was stronger than any grandmother, and her hands were more skillful. If the granny had been alone, she would have dragged it for 30 minutes, but the girl managed it in 5 minutes. The brunette was delighted with herself and her strength. The brunette was displeased. He noticed that it was their historic first date. Kang-hee wondered if her hands really looked dirty to him. The young man looked at his interlocutor and asked if she really thought they were clean. The girl suddenly touched Ha-jun's forehead lightly with her dirty finger. The guy didn't move. The brunette asked if they were so dirty, why didn't he dodge? The young man intercepted her hand. He admitted that even if these were dirty hands, it did not change the fact that these were his girlfriend's hands. Detective Zhu smiled with pleasure. She agreed with him. She only asked him not to change his mind. Kang Hee said that it didn't matter how dirty her hands were. She would only hold her lover with them. The young man was delighted by these words. What was in her hands now was the warmth that warmed this harsh world. The young people held hands, their fingers intertwined. The girl clarified that he knew this and that was why he held her hand. The brunette did not like dirty things at all, but he wanted to hold her hand as long as possible. The brunette thought about it. If you think about it, her boyfriend was a pretty good person. Kang Hee winked at her boyfriend. She said that his girlfriend was also not a slouch. The guy thought, what kind of smugness was that? Suddenly the brunette looked at Ha Jun intently. Fire flashed in her eyes. The girl made several sharp movements, pushed the guy. The brunette was perplexed. He closed one eye. He wanted to understand what had happened. The girl pressed him with her body against the wall of the building. The brunette looked at her boyfriend with wide eyes. It seemed to her that this was the perfect place and atmosphere for a kiss. And their current situation? The detective parted her plump lips. She addressed the guy, calling him dear. She reminded him of the words about how good he was at physical activity. The brunette stood very close to the young man. The following questions stunned the guy. Kang Hee asked if he ran well. Ha Jung got nervous. He admitted that he ran well, only perhaps on a treadmill. The detective looked out from around the corner. She was glad to hear such an answer from her interlocutor. The girl pointed at a man passing by. She explained that this guy was planning to rob someone. Kang Hee admitted that she had a premonition. She could tell by the atmosphere that was around her. The brunette listened attentively to her interlocutor. The brunette playfully winked at her boyfriend. Smiling, she asked if the young man would agree to help her. The girl immediately became serious. She explained that it was dangerous, but if he helped her catch the criminal. The young man interrupted the brunette's speech. He gently touched her hair. He reproachfully said that he always looked only at her. He Zhang took the girl's face in his hands. He looked into her eyes. He asked why she didn't do the same. The brunette was confused. The brunette didn't like what was happening. The young man reminded Detective Zhu that he was her boyfriend. The girl looked at her interlocutor in confusion. Exactly. She repeated as if she had just now realized that the brunette was her boyfriend. Kang Hee tried to take his hands away from her face. She asked the guy to try to understand her. The brunette reminded him that the workday had long since ended. The brunette couldn't refuse her police duty. Even if he wasn't a policeman, he couldn't pretend that everything was okay when someone was in danger. Suddenly, some loud sounds interrupted their argument. The criminal snatched a handbag from a passerby and started running away. The woman screamed, asked for help. Kang Hee peeked out from around the corner. The brunette was angry. She had suspected and expected something like this. Her movements were swift. The detective was about to give chase when her boyfriend's strong hand grabbed her arm. Kang Hee stopped. Ha Jung asked the girl to promise to reward him for this. The brunette thought about it. She replied that if he could catch the criminal. The guy simply smiled in response. Kang Hee suddenly rushed to the spot. She shouted at her boyfriend to run, calling him darling. The brunette was taken aback by such an address. Ha Jun thought that this relationship would work. He really wanted to believe it. The young man understood that this woman was chosen by his heart. And even if his heart couldn't take it and stopped from the excess of feelings for her, he shouldn't lose his mind. The detective shouted at the thief that she was from the police. She demanded that he stop while she was still kind. The criminal asked if she would have stopped in his place. They ran through the night city, their steps echoing loudly in the darkness of unfamiliar streets. Kang Hee was tired. The detective was breathing heavily. She stopped pursuing and tried to catch her breath. Wheezes came out of her mouth. That asshole. He was definitely an athlete. Who was she to run 100 meters in 16 seconds? Suddenly the brunette remembered her boyfriend. She turned around, but Ha Jun was nowhere to be seen. Kang Hee reasoned. Being good on the track didn't mean being fast in reality. The guy's muscles were just decoration. Looking around, the girl noticed a staircase nearby that led to another street. At first, she didn't even believe it. Kang Hee admitted that it would be good if the brunette used his smart brain at least a little. The handsome man ran, trying to keep up the rhythm. There were the crossroads that Kang Hee had told him about. He thought it was a blessing from heaven. He wanted to get a reward from his girlfriend. The brunette wondered if he was listening to her useless chatter. What were the chances that Ha-jun would be able to outrun the criminal? The girl ran. She didn't know if it was any use that she kept chasing him, trying to catch him, or if she should give up and go look for Ha-jun. Suddenly, the brunette heard her full name being called. Ju Kang-hee couldn't believe that something like this could happen. She saw two people fighting. A handsome man and a thief were grappling with each other. The girl couldn't believe that Ha-jun was able to actually get the criminal. The brunette screamed in horror when she saw the bruises and abrasions on her boyfriend's face. Kang-hee slowly approached the scene of the fight. She was worried that Ha-jun was injured. She couldn't decide whether to call an ambulance or the police first. The brunette looked at the girl and asked why she was standing there. She didn't want to help him with this criminal by any chance. The thief was kicking as he lay on the ground. The girl came to her senses. She took out the handcuffs. They jingled with chains. The brunette decided that she would call both the ambulance and the police later. Soon the police arrived at the crime scene. In the light of their flashing lights, the arriving officer reported to Kang-hee. The brunette sat at a distance, hidden by the shadows of the night. Soon the police car drove away, flashing its red taillights one last time. Kang-hee watched it go. The brunette watched his friend. He exhaled nervously. Suddenly, Ha-zi fell on the asphalt, spreading his arms wide to the sides. The girl turned sharply towards him. Kang-hee walked up to her boyfriend and sat down next to him. The young man laid his head on her lap. The ambulance was already on its way. She suggested that they rest for now. The girl sheepishly stated that, by the way, it was an honor. She did not allow just anyone to lie on her lap. Ha-jung said that his friend should have been a shaman, not a detective. He reminded her of her story about the crossroads. Did she really foresee this situation? The brunette laughed. She answered affirmatively. She said the girl didn't finish. Suddenly, Ha-jung screamed. His face was distorted with pain. Detective Ju fussed in fear. She asked what had happened. She asked where it hurt. The handsome man muttered that it shouldn't stop. The girl asked in bewilderment what he meant. Ha-jung clarified that he meant his heart. The brunette was scared. She clarified why his heart could have stopped. The brunette replied that he had run too fast. His eyes were closed. The guy was breathing heavily. He said that he shouldn't have overexerted himself. The detective was indignant. In that case, the guy should have just waited for her, not run away. They had only been dating for one day, and he was already acting like a hero. The handsome man reminded the girl of her promise of a reward if he could catch the criminal. The detective chuckled. She didn't expect him to accuse her. Ju Kang-hee was surprised when she heard her boyfriend persistently continue to insist that everything happened because of her. Ha-jun's head was resting on the girl's lap. His tired gaze was directed at the sky. He wanted to rest a little. He couldn't sleep all day. Kang-hee excitedly asked if it was okay for the guy to lie on the dirty asphalt. She knew that the young man did not like it when it was dirty. Ha-jung noticed that, as the girl had said, it was a pleasant feeling of warmth, not dirt. Now he understood what she was talking about the feeling of warmth. The young man said that when the ambulance arrived, the girl should tell them to go to Sejong Hospital. The brunette wanted to know why there. Ha-jung admitted that it was a specialized hospital. The young man was barely breathing. The girl looked at her boyfriend. It looked like he had fallen asleep. The brunette looked so elegant and vulnerable at the same time. The girl peered into the facial features of her young man. The brunette compared Shin Yoo-jin, Yoo Ha-jung. How she wished the handsome man was Yoo-jung, but the girl understood that at the same time she didn't want it. Kang-hee tried to understand herself. She was surprised by her thoughts. She tried to understand what these contradictory feelings were. The girl carefully brushed a strand of hair away from Ha-jun's face. She thought that a name was just a name. Kang-hee stroked the young man's face. She thought about how her life had turned into something unimaginable, and all of this happened because of this man. The modern building of Sejong Hospital was bathed in the rays of the rising sun. The morning sky painted the modern facade of the building in warm tones. A young man in hospital pajamas walked slowly down the corridor, leaning on an IV stand. A medical worker walked ahead. The lamps shone with a cold light. The air was filled with the characteristic smell of antiseptic. Behind each door of the special ward there was its own story, its own world of hopes and worries. The brunette's relatives were nearby. Kap-soo asked what had happened to his grandson. The guy said that he had taken a day off for today and would be back at work tomorrow. The brunette didn't want his family to know what had happened, but the hospital apparently let them know. Ha-jun was planning to take a day off and stay in the hospital. And then the plan was to visit Ju Kang-hee. Grandpa reminded me that the guy was going on a date. He asked why the heart suddenly... The man was very worried about his grandson. Suddenly, an interesting thought came into his head. Kap-soo asked his wife to go out for a while. The woman was upset, because she did not even have time to say hello to her grandson. As soon as the door slammed behind her, Grandpa decided to ask Ha-jun a delicate question. He leaned closer to his grandson's face and asked if he and the girl had already lived together. The boy answered in the negative. Sadness was reflected on the grandfather's face. Why not? The guy sadly answered that she was still just his girlfriend. Therefore, he had to behave decently. Kap-soo did not agree with the guy's words. He began to sharply reprimand his grandson that this was some kind of nonsense. The man thought that young people now did this before marriage. If everything suited them, they would get married anyway. The grandfather dreamed of seeing his great-grandchildren as soon as possible. Ha-jung noticed that the head of the family wanted to tell him something, but he didn't dare. So the brunette asked what was on his mind. Otherwise, the grandfather could burst. Kap-soo cleared his throat. He closed his eyes and asked his grandson to tell him honestly what he had done on the date to make his heart so overstrained. The brunette thought for a moment and admitted that during their date they had met a pickpocket. The grandfather raised his eyebrows in bewilderment. He asked again who they had met. The young man clarified that they had met a street robber. Kap-soo sternly said that the guy should have protected himself first and foremost. The brunette asked with displeasure what kind of woman would want to marry a coward after that. Kap-soo reminded the boy that he needed to take care of himself. The grandson asked that this situation be just an opportunity to take a short break from work. The head of the Yu family was dissatisfied. He repeated it again so that his grandson would not overexert himself. The brunette smiled broadly. He admitted that the doctor had told him not to worry, especially since overloads sometimes occurred. Grandfather insisted. After all, he was worried about these overloads. He asked his grandson not to do it anymore. The man stared at his grandson in surprise when the brunette admitted that he hadn't had this much fun in a long time. Ha-jun said that he ran like crazy, without thinking at all that something could happen to him. He was only worried about whether it would work. He didn't care that he might get sick from overexertion. The guy remembered lying on the ground. Kang-hee was sitting next to him. She was worried about her boyfriend. She was talking about an ambulance, and the brunette was going to get an award. He remembered how he accused the girl that everything happened because of her. He had never seen the brunette smile. Recalling the dangerous adventure he had experienced, the brunette thought that he would want to do it again. Kap-soo turned around abruptly. He indignantly cried out that this was what his grandson meant. The guy replied conciliatorily that he was talking about a date with his girlfriend. The grandfather asked permission to ask a question. He clarified what his grandson wanted. He was curious to the point of horror. Sitting on his hospital bed, the brunette thought for a moment and replied that he would like to have a normal family, as his grandfather had wished. Kap-soo asked what the grandson understood as the concept of a normal family. The brunette recalled that his grandfather had the family he wanted. He told his grandson to just find someone and get married. The man did not argue with the guy, but he decided to make some adjustments. He admitted that for him a normal family is kindness, responsiveness, and skillful hands. And strength, of course. Ha-jun remembered the episode with his grandmother. The woman was surprised that detectives could be nice and kind, and she told the guy not to let this girl go. Kang-hee looked at her dirty hands and said that she was stronger than any grandmother, and she had more skillful hands. These memories brought a happy smile to the boy's face. He quietly said that all these conditions were suitable. The grandfather did not understand what his grandson meant. He looked at the guy intently. The brunette smiled and said that all this suited his girlfriend. Ha-jung approached his grandfather with a question. He didn't understand what use all that money was. He suggested simply hiring people. Kap-soo asked why his grandson had suddenly started talking about this. The brunette admitted that he had kept the promise he had given to his girlfriend. If the grandfather also makes a promise, the young man will do it as soon as possible. The head of the Yu family was surprised when he heard that his grandson was referring to marriage. The doors of the special ward slammed quietly as Kap-soo left the room. He was thinking about the promise in his mind. The man thought hard that if his grandson got married, there would be nothing wrong with that. His wife and daughter were waiting for him in the hospital corridor. Ha-jun's mother held a heavy bag in front of her. The head of the family ordered him to go home. Okay, he only wanted to give her the food. But the man reminded her that his grandson didn't eat when he was tired. He reproached her that they were relatives. He shouted at them. He said that Ha Jong had gone to sleep. He asked not to disturb him and to leave him alone. The woman was carrying a huge bag of food with difficulty. An appetizing aroma was coming from it. But Ok Hai did not contradict her father. Sejong Hospital. The same day, sometime later. Shouts of admiration could be heard from the room. The detective couldn't understand how there could be such a big TV in a hospital room. And remote control for the blinds. This really was a special room. Kang Hee admired the view from the windows. The brunette asked, was the hospital interior really more interesting than her sick boyfriend? Detective Ju turned to her interlocutor, embarrassed. She asked how his heart was. The young man said that he just needed to take some medicine and rest. The brunette wondered what kind of man he was that had such a weak heart. Hazi sheepishly agreed with her. The detective expressed interest in when the young man would be discharged. The brunette replied that tomorrow. Kang Hee was excited. She bit her lips nervously. The guy noticed it. He asked her to say what she wanted. The brunette raised her eyebrows in surprise. She didn't understand how the young man understood this. The brunette smiled. He noticed that the girl bit her lips when she wanted to say something but held back. Was she afraid that he studied her carefully? Kang Hee blushed when she heard the young man admit that he could read her mind. The young man made a quick jerk and sat up straight on the hospital bed. He admitted that this was already happening to him at the level of instincts. The brunette will be pleased if he can thoroughly understand what interests him. If this is a living soul, then he will know everything. Down to every cell. Ha-jun extended his hand to the girl. He confessed that this way he could conquer her. He gently touched the girl's face. He said that she would be completely his. The handsome man gently ran his fingers over the girl's face. He stroked the place under her eye. Kang Hee was surprised that the guy wanted to conquer her. The brunette gently stroked the girl's face. He admitted that it was amazing. The girl asked him what was so surprising about him. Was it the first time he saw a mole under his eye? Ha-jun admitted that he only liked her. The handsome man smiled. He noticed that the girl was looking at him as if she was about to cry. For some reason, he thought she was pretending. Kang Hee blushed from such confessions. The brunette was afraid that if the girl cried, his heart would not be able to withstand this beauty. The detective waved her hand, removing the guy's hand. Said that she had never cried. Suggested that her boyfriend continue dreaming. The young man replied that there was no such thing as never. He asked the girl not to say never. Kang Hee lowered her eyes. She existed. If the brunette shed even a tear, she would hurt her pride because she would look pathetic and weak. Although the girl knew that only tears could help express her emotions and cleanse her soul, otherwise these mental wounds would continue to rot. And in order for the wounds to heal, you need to help all this pus flow out of them. On a piece of paper was written a promise to definitely marry Ju Kang Hee. The brunette stood in a strange room and shook with sobs. There were books on the table. There was a laptop. On the wall hung a piece of paper with a promise to marry her. It seemed to her that she had then shed tears for the rest of her life. Kang Hee was pulled out of her painful memories by her boyfriend's voice. The handsome man noted that the girl was flying in the clouds again. The detective shuddered at his words. The brunette asked the girl if she knew that it was this very thing about her that made him want to conquer her. The guy looked closely at his interlocutor and admitted that he would like to be the reason for her tears. The girl involuntarily glanced at her boyfriend. She sternly repeated once again that he would never see her in tears. Ha-jun said that people with moles under their eyes were very sensitive. Even a small reason was enough to make them cry. The girl stared at her boyfriend in surprise. The guy insisted that it was a proven fact. Kang Hee asked incredulously who had proven it. The interlocutor said that it had been proven by psychologist Peter Anderson. The brunette folded her arms across her chest. She laughed. She noticed that in that case she was an exception. Ha-ju doubted her words. The friend snorted. Said she wouldn't cry. Ha-jun said he believed her. But the words were said sarcastically. Kang Hee looked at him intently. It seemed to her that his words did not sound convincing at all. The girl insisted that she had never cried. The brunette replied that he had already realized this. Kang Hee insisted that she would never cry under any circumstances. Ha Jong was already laughing openly. The girl was shaking with anger. She understood that he did not believe her. If she continued any further, she would achieve nothing. Kang Hee grabbed the pillow, swung it, threatened that if the guy continued to mock her, she would no longer care whether he was a patient or not. The brunette shuddered. Suddenly the girl's phone rang. It was her employee, Hyun-oh. The brunette breathed a sigh of relief. The detective answered the call. The girl tensed up from what she heard. The subordinate reported that a suspect had shown up. The brunette, looking at his friend, grinned contentedly. Kang Hee promised that she would come now. They were already waiting for her. The brunette was smiling. The girl told her boyfriend that this call saved his life, ordered a subordinate to check the car's number and registration. Noticed that it was already on the way. The heavy door of the police car slammed behind Detective Zhu with a dull metallic thud, breaking the silence of the parking lot. The phone rang immediately. The girl answered. Ha Zhang wanted to know what the brunette wanted to talk to him about. Kang Hee thought she was going to find out about receiving the Brave Citizen Award. She said that she was going to send another police officer to her boyfriend. Ha Jun was delighted to hear about the other police officer, admitting that he was eager to tell them that they had met. Kang Hee threatened to not want to see him for months if he tried. The brunette asked if she was suggesting a secret relationship. The brunette admitted that she hated burdensome things the most. It was unknown how long their relationship would last. The guy allowed it. He suggested that if the girl said she missed him, she could send another policeman to him. Even today. Kang Hee said that she was currently heading towards Gyeonggi-do. If it was all in vain, she didn't know if she would be able to return to Seoul today. The brunette immediately replied that he would come then, and it didn't matter to him where. If she wanted to meet, he promised to come. The brunette smiled dreamily. She remembered that he came from China. Wherever she was, this man always came to her. An inconspicuous minivan stopped on one of the city streets. Its tinted windows reflected the surrounding high-rise buildings. A family of 3 was visible through the tall, transparent windows. The person watching them accused the man, calling him a shameless idiot. Hyuno followed the suspect. He rolled down the car window a little. He knew that the man had already destroyed 2 families because of the money he had once lent. The suspect reached out and took the child. The policeman was surprised that the man could now smile so calmly at his family. Kang Hee was in the van. The detective ordered her subordinates to block the building's back door. This was in case of an emergency. She told Hyuno to go with her. The subordinate nodded. She ordered the newbie to follow her as well. I asked the young guy if he was worried. The employee admitted that he was a little worried. Hyuno laughed and noticed that there were a lot of scary things here. He asked why the newbie had come here then. The guy admitted that the crime department was a dream. The worst people met there, and he especially wanted to catch murderers. More experienced staff reported that he could lose himself in this dream. Those around him laughed. Kang Hee looked at the new guy. The guy was downcast. His head was hanging low. The brunette forbade scaring him. She noticed that he could faint now. Hyun-oh reminded the boss that she had told him the same thing when he was an intern. The brunette said that the employee had been very scared and vulnerable back then. I noticed that their youngest looked very caring now. The newcomer blushed, scratched the back of his head. Kang Hee asked not to provoke the thug when the guy entered the building. He couldn't do anything dangerous as long as he was with his family. She reassured him that Sunbae would be with the young employee, so the guy just needed to follow the instructions. Suddenly, the girl was distracted by a new incoming message. The boyfriend was asking if they could see each other today. The girl thought for a moment. Then she quickly typed a reply. She suspected that they would not see each other. The guy wrote to her to catch the criminal and not to think about him. The brunette suspected that Ha Jung would tell her to run to him at dawn after work. The brunette urged her not to rush and be careful, asked her to call him when she finished, when it was convenient for her. Detective Zhu understood that he would wait. Suddenly, the girl wrote her address. It was very far from the hospital. She suggested the guy to wait at her house. Kang Hee couldn't believe that she had given away her address and code to her house just 2 days after they started dating. She thought it was a nightmare. She was embarrassed. She immediately wrote a message so that her boyfriend would forget about it. She blushed. She realized that this was even more of a nightmare. The melodic trill of the doorbell filled the air, breaking the silence of the house with its gentle ding-dong. A massive door with the number 103 appeared before the newcomers. People suspected that they were being watched warily from the round peephole. A worried female face appeared behind the half-open door. Detective Ju showed her ID. She asked if Mr. Moon Sang-gyun was home. The landlady wanted to know from her husband why the police were looking for him. Kang Hee asked Mr. Moon Sang-gyun if he could step out for a while. Detective Ju insisted, explaining that they needed to talk to the man in person. Kang Hee knew it was too dangerous to mention the crime and provoke him in front of her family. Suddenly, a girl ran out into the hallway. She called her father. The girl watched the man closely. She suspected that the criminal was hiding something behind his back. It looked like the man had something in his hands. The girl was wearing leather gloves. The boyfriend also warned her in a message not to hurt herself. Suddenly, the trainee shouted that the suspect should go with them without resistance. He threatened to handcuff him. His colleagues looked at him in surprise. The owner of the apartment did not understand what was happening. Was it really necessary to resort to such measures? She asked what her husband had done. The young officer replied that Mr. Moon Sang-gyun had committed the murder. He had ordered the murder of his acquaintance Park Hae-soon and his partner Kim Sung-taek. The landlady didn't believe it. She said her husband wasn't like that. She didn't believe in murder. It was some kind of misunderstanding. Her husband tensed up behind her. Kang Hee noticed the sudden movement made by the suspect. The man had a huge knife in his hands. The girl screamed in fear at what she saw. The suspect lunged towards the trainee. Kang Hee reacted quickly and managed to grab the blade of the bladed weapon with both hands. The boy was shaking with fear. He closed his eyes. The tip of the knife was literally a few centimeters from his face. Detective Zhu held the weapon tightly in her hand. The intern slowly opened one eye. Then his eyes widened. He saw Kang Hee clutching the blade of a knife. The criminal's hand was shaking. The brunette ordered the suspect to be arrested. The girl was crying in fear. She was wiping away her tears with her fists. The criminal's wife covered her mouth with her hands in horror. Detective Zhu walked home slowly through the night city. Fortunately, she was not injured thanks to her leather gloves. Kang Hee looked at the screen of her phone. The glowing screen of her smartphone cut through the darkness. It was just after 2 in the morning. The brunette understood that it was already late. She wondered if her boyfriend was really going to come. She saw someone else's shoes on the threshold of her apartment. In the semi-darkness of her room, Kang Hee stood frozen by her bed. A young man lay on her bed. The brunette found it hard to believe that Ha Jong had actually come. She was glad about it. Suddenly the boy opened one eye and blinked sleepily. He saw Ju Kang Hee and was happy. The young man sat up in bed. He rubbed his eyes sleepily. He asked his friend if they had caught the criminal. Kang Hee replied that they had. The brunette asked if the girl was hurt. Kang Hee spread her arms out to the sides. She said that as far as he could see, she was fine. Ha Jong praised the girl, said she was great. The brunette looked at the handsome man in surprise. Was that the best praise the brunette could give? The girl thought that it was his style. She remembered that Shin Yu-jin was the same. Kang Hee didn't expect her boyfriend to leave his luxurious room for her home. The brunette replied that he should be there if his girlfriend needed him. The detective realized that his goal was to see her. Now he could go. She pointed to the door. The brunette was surprised. Didn't she want to spend the night together? Kang Hee was embarrassed. She said that her bed was very small, and she was a very light sleeper. The brunette smiled and said that the girl could sleep on him. He could handle it. Kang Hee got angry. She ordered him to stop dodging and leave. The handsome man reached for the girl's hand and asked if she wanted him to hold her hand all night. The girl did not allow him to hold her hand. Ha Jong reminded him that they had met. The brunette replied that even between spouses there were rules of decency. Ha Jun said that if his friend gave in to emotions, he would take care of it. He asked her to trust him. He asked if it was unpleasant for her. Kang Hee answered in the negative. She looked away shyly and honestly admitted that she had not had a relationship for a long time. That's why she felt a little awkward that someone was so attentive to her. The girl thought about her boyfriend's honesty and straightforwardness. This man was going ahead so shamelessly and confidently. Kang Hee was blushing with embarrassment. That's why she asked him not to rush into it. She asked her boyfriend to make sure she didn't feel awkward. Ha Jong laughed. He swung his legs to the floor. He boastfully admitted that this was what he was good at. Detective Zhu thought about how other men perceived her. As a strong, intimidating, complex woman. One such day, Shin Yu-jin was the only one the girl felt comfortable with. Kang Hee asked the brunette what the guy was good at. Was it touching a girl without her permission? The handsome man raised his left hand and a thin ring gleamed on his finger. The brunette admitted that he hadn't touched anything without permission. Kang Hee objected. She kept looking at the ring. The brunette noticed that she was curious. The ring attracted the girl more than he did. A blush colored the detective's cheeks. Dark strands of hair framed her face. In the depths of her wide-open eyes there was a subtle worry and anger. The brunette was angry. If Ha Jong knew this, then let him show it to her. The guy didn't want to. Then the detective demanded to take it off if he didn't want to show it. Suddenly the girl stopped. She wondered what she was doing. She was muttering something under her breath. The brunette admitted that he wore the ring to attract his girlfriend's attention. That's why the young man couldn't take it off. Kang Hee tensed up. She knew it would take 3 seconds. She meant the time to remove the ring from his hand. The girl came closer and touched the guy on the shoulder. The young man looked at her hand. And suddenly the girlfriend pushed him hard. Ha Zhang was sprawled on the bed. The girl was hanging over him. She reminded him of his words about wanting to conquer her. The brunette leaned closer to her boyfriend. She asked him if he had thought about the fact that before he succeeded. She was silent. She continued her sentence that he would already be conquered by her. Ha-jun admitted that it sounded good. He would submit to her as much as she wanted. Kang Hee slowly stroked her boyfriend's hand and asked him if he had no male pride. The girl followed her plan. She moved slowly, running her hand along Ha-jun's arm. So, just a little more. The brunette had already reached her boyfriend's wrist. The brunette stared into the girl's eyes. He asked what the difference was. For him, it was the same thing, to conquer or to be conquered. The girl's fingers were almost touching the ring. Her fingers were slowly stroking the guy's hand. There was just a little bit left. Kang Hee didn't understand how it all happened. But a sharp movement and now the girl was lying on her back. And above her towered the brunette. The guy smiled happily, looking into the brunette's eyes. Ha Zhang admitted that it meant only one thing, to be on top or bottom. The boyfriend clarified that it made no difference to him, as long as he liked it. Kang Hee asked him if he liked it when she was on the bottom. The brunette answered in the affirmative. He admitted that what he saw now, in the darkness, how the girl lay defenseless on the bed, he found it extremely tempting. Kang Hee's hair was scattered on the bed. Her face was red with embarrassment. Her eyes were wide open and she was watching her boyfriend attentively. Detective Zhu frowned and said that if her boyfriend wanted to remain unharmed, he had better get off her. The brunette reminded that the girl was the one who started it. He noted with displeasure that it was the ring again. Kang Hee gasped in embarrassment. Her face turned red from shame and embarrassment. Did he really guess? The brunette noted a good try. But he wasn't fooled. He asked what was wrong with the ring. It wasn't her style to attack him just because of that. Kang Hee admitted that the ring was very important to her, but he wouldn't let her see it. She thought it was unfair. Suddenly she screamed. What was Ha Zhang doing? The guy reached for the chain around her neck. There was a ring hanging on it. He asked if this ring was really that special. The girl tensed up, reminded her of her request not to touch her without permission. The brunette asked if this even extended to things that weren't part of her body. The brunette was already angry. She shouted that the things also can't be touched. She asked to stop these games without rules. The interlocutor smiled. He asked what would happen if he said that it was she who taught him to go against the rules. The brunette was angry. She pushed the guy hanging over her away with all her might, but she miscalculated her strength. The brunette staggered and began to fall. The detective tried to hold him by the arms. She pulled with all her might. They both started to fall. Ha Zhang found himself lying on his back. He grabbed the girl's hand tightly. A few sharp movements, muffled sounds of struggle, and the girl was under the brunette again. The young man held her hands at the sides. Kang Hee was angry. She was breathing heavily. She advised the brunette not to think that everything was so simple. Being in a relationship doesn't mean playing with fire. You have to be decent and decent. She reminded him that those weren't her words but her boyfriend's. Ha-jun asked her to answer him since the girl was so desperate. He continued to squeeze her wrist. He asked if he would show her the ring. Wanted to know how long this game with fire would last. Asked for an answer right now. Ha-jun brought his face close to the girl's face. He asked her to tell him right there in bed. The brunette was very serious. He demanded an answer from Ju Kang Hee. The girl was silent, looking attentively at her interlocutor. Kang Hee was going to go all the way, and she promised to finish with the brunette. Playing with fire was worth the candle. And even though it could end badly, she still decided to take the risk. The girl assumed that they might not see each other again, so she suggested either showing her the ring or continue to play with fire. Gave Yu Ha-jun the opportunity to make his own choice. The young man exhaled sharply, muttered why was his girlfriend so difficult. The guy slowly rose to his knees and promised that when the time came, he would show her the ring. Kang Hee stood up abruptly. Detective Ju asked when that time would come. Ha-jun replied that it would happen as soon as the girl stopped seeing him in him. The brunette reminded him that he said that he didn't care. The brunette turned to his interlocutor. His face was very serious. He admitted that it was before he found himself above the girl. He explained that seeing it with his own eyes was too humiliating. Kang Hee found it unpleasant to hear such words. The guy admitted that he couldn't go further until he erased him from his girlfriend's memories, and it didn't matter how seductive she looked. Looking into his girlfriend's wide-open eyes, the brunette promised that he would hold out until the end. The brunette smiled. He calmed his friend down. He told her not to worry. It wouldn't take long. Kang Hee screamed that she wasn't worried at all. She thought. Who in general said that this could happen? She saw an outstretched hand in front of her. The guy was offering her to go. The brunette was surprised. The brunette said that everything was pointless for now. Why did he offer his hand then? The handsome man admitted that he had already made progress in this. Kang Hee concluded that what he had already done was not considered progress. She asked where they were going to go. The guy suggested having a snack. The brunette was surprised. The boyfriend once said that he didn't eat after 6. The handsome man smiled. The clock on the wall, visible behind the young man, showed 2:30 in the morning. Ha Jong replied that this girl would eat. I was sure that Detective Zhu had dismissed her colleagues early to finish all the work alone. It looked like she hadn't eaten until late at night. Kang Hee was embarrassed. She didn't understand how he knew. The brunette smiled. He was sure that if he hadn't been there, the girl would have immediately fallen onto the bed and fallen asleep. He said that this was the purpose of his visit today. To see and feed his girlfriend who had worked hard. Ha Jun asked the brown-haired girl if he didn't deserve it. He reminded her that he was her boyfriend. The handsome man smiled and said that his purpose for visiting was innocent. If the girl fell asleep, he would take her hand and fall asleep next to her. Kang Hee understood that her boyfriend looked like the most dissolute person. She couldn't believe his kindness and decency. She apologized for misunderstanding. Detective Zhu admitted that her boyfriend looked so indecent that she herself seemed to have become like that. The brunette asked if his friend really thought beauty was something indecent. The girl thought he knew he was handsome. It would be strange not to realize it. Kang Hee raised her hand in a conciliatory manner. She said her opinion. She thought that excessive beauty was vicious. She admitted that it really irritated her. Ha Zhang thought about it. The girl praised him, or? The brunette smiled. She said it depended on the interpretation. She hoped the brunette agreed with her. The detective suggested they go eat already. The boyfriend told her not to change the subject. The girl reminded the brunette that it was his idea to have a snack. She said that she knew a good place. The young men entered a small shop. The girl assured that there was nothing the guy wouldn't like here. The brunette didn't really count on it. It was a 24-hour store. The guy looked around. He carefully examined the shelves in the display cases. The brunette said that it was delicious here, and most importantly, it was fast, and also at a low price. Kang Hee was glad that she could enjoy the buffet menu. Detective Zhu asked the boy if he agreed that it was great. The young man laughed nervously. The coat slowly slid off his shoulder. The girl at the checkout noticed the night visitors. She recognized the detective and waved her hand in greeting. The brunette also recognized the girl at the checkout. She greeted Yanji politely. She waved her hand in response. The store employee whispered to Kang Hee that it looked like a drama was being filmed in their area. The brunette didn't understand what the girl meant. The cashier explained her speculation by saying that otherwise, why would a celebrity come in at such a late hour? Kang Hee asked who the celebrity was. Yanji and the brunette stared at the brunette. The young man also looked at the two girls. Kang Hee couldn't believe that the cashier saw the man as a celebrity. The cashier noticed his face and style. He was definitely a celebrity. Detective Zhu thought it looked more like hospital pajamas than any style. The cashier was sure that was why it was famous. He wore pajamas to make a statement about himself and his unique style. Yanji felt like she had seen him somewhere, but she couldn't remember where. The brunette asked the girl if she liked this type of guy. The cashier sheepishly said that he was too handsome. She felt uncomfortable. Kang Hee narrowed her eyes. She noticed that it was not beauty but wickedness. The interlocutor did not understand her. The brunette explained that she read it as an expression of licentiousness, especially in relation to women. Yanji agreed. If you think about it, Detective Zhu was right. The brunette exhaled sharply. The guy heard everything. He stared at the girls. The cashier turned away from the handsome man. She blushed. She declared that this beauty was so vicious that she couldn't even look at him. The brunette turned to his girlfriend. He told Zhu Kang Hee to call him, how to decide. The guy walked out of the store. The bell on the door melodically indicated that he had left the store. Prosecutor Choi received a text message from employee Kang Hee on his phone. The subordinate asked him to take care of his boss, because she hadn't even had lunch. Jin Hyuk was neither the girl's family member nor her boyfriend. He was just a friend who should behave accordingly. Their relationship was not close. He was worried about the girl. He thought they should meet. Driving past Ju Kong-hee's favorite convenience store, the young man felt nervous. He thought to himself that he was definitely crazy. The prosecutor believed that by pretending to be brave, the brunette thought that this was the only way she could cope with everything. She cared about her team, forgetting about herself. It might seem reasonable, but in reality it was stupid to do so. The only way for Detective Ju, who suffered from insomnia after Shin Yoo-jin's death, was to work until she was exhausted. And even though her heart was still suffering from unhappy love, the prosecutor could not allow her to faint from overwork and malnutrition. The young man believed that he was the only man who could accept her like this. He thought that the silly Ju Kong-hee would soon realize this. The man opened the car door. He thought that then he could propose to Kang-hee again and get married. I was sure that time heals. I decided that I should try calling the girl first. Suddenly his gaze noticed a young man who was sitting near the store. His appearance surprised the prosecutor. A cashmere coat was worn over hospital pajamas. Yes, the outfit was completely out of place. Jin Hyuk listened to the beeps on the phone and thought that he had seen this man somewhere before. The prosecutor felt uncomfortable in front of the man in hospital pajamas. He thought that he too should dress up. The call was in progress. Prosecutor Choi listened to the endless beeps. No one picked up. The two men's eyes met. Jin Hyuk was surprised to see that the stranger was looking at him. The brunette really was looking at the prosecutor. Kang-hee answered Prosecutor Choi's call and asked if he would always call at inconvenient times. The man asked if the girl was asleep. Detective Ju said with displeasure that she would have answered the phone if she had been asleep. Jin Hyuk asked what the girl was doing. The girl replied that she was shopping. The interlocutor was surprised. Is that really possible at such a time? Suddenly the prosecutor stopped. He looked carefully through the glass window of the store. At this time, Detective Ju was holding a basket of goods inside the store. She asked about the reason for the call. She asked if it was work-related or something personal. The man said it was personal. The girl threatened that she would then switch off. The prosecutor hinted that he could pay for all her groceries. The man appeared behind the brunette. Kang-hee stared at the man in surprise. The man smiled. The girl demanded that Prosecutor Choi leave immediately. The interlocutor did not understand why. He asked if the girl was sick. The brunette promised that she would tell him later. She asked him to just leave. She looked at her interlocutor imploringly. The prosecutor said he understood. He took the full basket from her hands. He said he would pay first. Jin Hyuk handed his bank card to the cashier. He asked her to make the payment. Suddenly, the card was snatched from the hands of the store employee. The cashier did not understand what was happening. Ha Jung appeared behind them. The guy was holding a plastic card in his hand. He was asking the brunette who it was to pay for her. Prosecutor Choi stared at the brunette in surprise. The man didn't know who he was. Kang-hee was very upset. She reminded the prosecutor that she had told him to leave. Jin Hyuk glared at the brunette and asked who he was to speak to him so rudely. The handsome man pulled the prosecutor's card. He told the brunette that she should have finished with him long ago. He reminded her of his warning. He asked if the girl had already forgotten. He put Ju Kong-hee before a choice. The brunette folded his arms across his chest. He asked if the girl could do it, or if he would have to do it himself. The prosecutor was beside himself with rage. He asked Ju Kong-hee if she knew this guy. The girl shuddered. What the hell was going on? The men looked at each other angrily. The girl asked both Prosecutor Choi and Yoo Ha-jun to calm down. Jin Hyuk snatched the plastic card from the brunette's hands, told him to give him his bank card. Both young men simultaneously handed their cards to the store employee and demanded that she calculate them. Hyunji felt awkward. The girl was nervous. She asked the brunette whose card she needed to take. Both young men were tense to the limit. It seemed that something around them would thunder or explode. Kang-hee looked at the two hapless gentlemen carefully. The girl was also a little nervous and felt awkward. The brunette made her choice. She abruptly snatched the plastic card from the brunette's hands. The guy looked very pleased. The prosecutor didn't like it. Detective Ju asked the cashier to check her out. The store clerk did so with pleasure. Jin Hyuk called out to the girl. He was at a loss. Kang-hee turned towards the boys. The girl was very hungry. She said that she would go and eat. She suggested that they sort it out themselves, until they got tired of it. The girl thought for a moment. The detective decided to give the guys a hint. She pointed at the prosecutor and said that he was her best friend. Then she pointed at Ha-jun. She was silent for a while. She honestly admitted that it was her boyfriend. Both young men looked sideways at each other. Jin Hyuk was very surprised. He asked the girl with disbelief what she meant. The brunette smiled sweetly. She told Jin Hyuk that she and the brunette were the same age. The prosecutor was taken aback. He sighed heavily. He didn't understand why the guy standing next to him was so handsome. Why he looked younger than his age. Kyung-hee was sitting at a table outside. Her food was smelling delicious. She couldn't understand how it was that even eating was a problem. The brunette enjoyed the simple meal. She happily chewed the ramen from the bowl. She looked with anticipation at the delicious rolls waiting for their turn. The girl turned her head to the side and peered into the glass shop window. She decided that nevertheless, at the moment, she had a good view. The two young men remained in the store. They stood opposite each other. They did not take their intense gazes off each other. The brunette picked up one of the rolls with her chopsticks. She thought about it and decided that she had clarified things a little. So, she really hoped that they would figure it out. Jin Hyuk thought about it. The brunette called the stranger her boyfriend. Judging by the black card he held out, he was not an ordinary worker. The prosecutor noted with displeasure that the brunette looked elegant even in his hospital pajamas. He wondered if people were born that way. He looked at his vis-a-vis. Prosecutor Choi was 182 centimeters tall. He considered that above average, but the brunette was clearly winning. Ha-jung also cautiously watched his rival. He thought about how this guy was not just a friend to his girlfriend, but the best one. The brunette looked back. He looked through the glass of the shop window onto the street. His girlfriend was sitting there. I thought that since they were so close, it was not worth blatantly ignoring the prosecutor. Ha-jun decided to resort to a little trick. He put on his sweetest and most charming smile. He extended his hand to the prosecutor. He said his name was Yu Ha-jung. The brunette tried to smile his most inimitable smile. Prosecutor Choi was tensely silent. The interlocutor was watching his competitor very carefully. Then he resolutely extended his hand. He said that he was Choi Jin-hyuk. The young people introduced themselves and shook hands. Prosecutor Choi asked if they had met somewhere before. There was some strange feeling. The brunette smiled. He said he didn't know. He is a very ordinary person. The young people stared at each other with heavy glances for some time. Both tried not to even blink. They were silent. Ha-jung was the first to break their silence. He told the respected prosecutor that he believed that the other person was very strong, so he could loosen his grip. In response, the brunette squeezed his hand with force. He admitted that he wanted to ease the tension between them, but was forced to warn him. He said with a grin that if something happened to that hand, the prosecutor would have to pay tens of billions of won in damages. He admitted that this hand helped him in creating several projects. One of them was the iPhone that his rival used. The prosecutor's eyes widened in surprise. A sudden realization struck his mind like a flash of lightning in a dark sky. He recognized the brunette as Yu Ha-jun. The brunette was demonstratively looking at his hand carefully. He confirmed the prosecutor's guess by simply groaning. Jin Hyuk looked at his interlocutor in shock. The young man's informal "uh-huh" sounded too harsh. The brunette noticed that they were the same age. He reminded that the prosecutor was the first to show disrespect. Ha-jung promised to treat his interlocutor properly next time. The prosecutor was surprised why he decided so. The brunette explained that the prosecutor was his girlfriend's best friend, so he had to be polite to him, like her boyfriend. He made it clear where the line was in their relationship. The prosecutor was her friend, and Ha-jung was her boyfriend. The brunette admitted ironically that he had to thank Jin Hyuk. The guy kept smiling. He folded his arms across his chest. The prosecutor was surprised. He looked askance at his interlocutor. He couldn't even imagine what the brunette was going to thank him for. The handsome man explained to Choi Jin-hyuk that he was grateful to them for not marrying Detective Ju. He said that he was grateful that his opponent had been doing nothing for a long time like a fool. After these words of the brunette, the prosecutor frowned. Ha-jun explained that thanks to him, the brunette had a chance. That's why he wanted to repay him with a good dinner or a gift. The brunette suggested that they contact each other through Kang-hee. He wanted to make up for the embarrassing incident that happened in front of his girlfriend. Ha-jung smiled, but it was not a sincere smile. The prosecutor was very serious. Jin Hyuk asked if the brunette was being overconfident. After all, only a few days had passed. He asked how much he knew about the detective. The prosecutor himself did not know why the brunette was attracted to the handsome man. But the reality was that the young man was only dating a shell of a girl. I noticed, looking at the girl in the shop window, that there was no room for anyone in her heart, because it already had an owner. The prosecutor looked down, said it was the reason he couldn't get married, and the reason he'd watched for so long and not intervened. The brunette's rival admitted that the two of them couldn't defeat him. He declared that Ha Zhang would soon become the same as him. Prosecutor Choi gave the brunette advice as a man to a man. He suggested that he listen to him. The brunette promised to listen to the prosecutor's advice. However, he noticed that he was different from him. The guy looked at his open palm. All he wanted was to keep at least the shell next to him. The guy clenched his fist tightly. If he hadn't been confident in himself, he wouldn't have started this. In any case, the brunette was sure that there was a soul inside the shell. Ha-jun admitted that he had enough time, and he was determined. He asked his interlocutor what the problem was. The brunette condescendingly patted the prosecutor on the shoulder. Smiling, he said that he was planning to send out wedding invitations soon. The prosecutor's lips pressed into a thin line. There was obvious displeasure in the depths of his dark eyes. Jin Hyuk quickly left the store, throwing a short bye over his shoulder. His footsteps echoed off the walls, leaving the girl with a confused expression on her face. Kyung Hee called after the prosecutor, asking if he was leaving already. She heard no answer. The man slammed the door of his car. Bright headlights cut through the darkness of the night, and the car moved off. The girl watched her friend flee in confusion. Ha Jung stood at the threshold of the store. The brunette turned her head to her boyfriend and asked what they were discussing. Ha Jun said with a smile on his face that if she was so curious, she should listen carefully. He didn't have the habit of repeating himself. Detective Ju couldn't believe that Choi Jin-hyuk had left so quickly. The girl looked at her boyfriend tensely. She was very curious about what they were talking about. Ha-jun looked at his friend and said that if she was so curious, then she should try asking her best friend. The brunette frowned. The girl drew her eyebrows together. She looked at her boyfriend with a displeased expression. The brunette grinned, raised his hand in a conciliatory gesture, explained that it was just a conversation between men. That's all. Kang Hee's eyes flashed furiously. Did the guy really just tell her, "That's it"? Was he serious? The guy said that they continued their conversation, dropping formalities since they were the same age. They gave each other advice. Later they were going to have dinner. Ha-jun asked if his friend was afraid that he would suffer at the hands of her best friend. The girl clarified that she was worried not about him, but about the prosecutor. She said that the brunette was her boyfriend for only a few days, and that Prosecutor Choi had been her best friend for over 10 years. Wasn't it obvious? The young man silently pulled a chair closer to him. Kang Hee wondered if the brunette's pride had been hurt. Ha Zhang grinned. He admitted that his pride was hurt, but that was not the reason. He turned to Ju Kang Hee. Did she really think that the guy waited for her for so long just to eat with her at the supermarket? He admitted that if his girlfriend's goal was to annoy him, then the girl succeeded. Kang Hee asked if he had considered the option of her taking him along with her, so that the brunette would relax. The girl didn't quite understand how visiting the supermarket hurt his pride, but the road to the 24-hour restaurant was long even by car. She didn't want to bother her boyfriend anymore, who was hospitalized because of her. The girl smiled sweetly and said that a date at night on an alley near a 24-hour store is, in its own way, an atmospheric and unusual date. The brunette asked to assume that it was not night. He asked what kind of food the girl would prefer. It wasn't that the brunette wanted food. She thought about the buffet. The boyfriend asked the name of the hotel. The detective noted that the hotel was very expensive. The handsome man said that his girlfriend shouldn't worry about it. Money was his concern. Kang Hee the dreamer smiled. She decided that it would be the buffet at the Ramada Hotel then. She had heard that the desserts there were mind-blowing. Ha-jun stood up from his seat. He called the girl to come with him. The detective asked where he was going. The handsome man smiled his signature smile and announced that they were going to the Ramada Hotel. Kang Hee continued eating. She asked her boyfriend if he was crazy. A buffet at a restaurant was not a hangover soup joint for him. Ha-jun said that everything was resolved with a simple phone call. The girl asked the guy if he was a third-generation chaebol. The guy answered in the negative. Kang Hee asked how that was possible back then. The brunette admitted that it wasn't only the chaebol who could open a buffet at night. The brunette stared at her boyfriend with distrust. She asked who else could do this. The young man approached Kang Hee and said that she just needed to know this. The brunette admitted that he could do anything the girl wanted. Not just a buffet, anything. If she tells him to come, he will come. He will do whatever she wants, regardless of time and place. Therefore, the brunette could enjoy all the benefits of her position as his girlfriend. Kang-hee looked at her interlocutor in surprise. For no reason, for any reason, anything. The brunette remembered how the guy said that he started dating her because of a mole. If it wasn't love, then what the hell? The brunette said that it had only been a few days and asked why he did that. The brunette replied that she was his first in everything. He promised to value and respect her. He said that this was why today was her last time at the 24-hour store. Detective Zhu's head snapped up and she looked inside through the glass window of the store. Hyunji was sitting on a chair behind the cash register. The store was empty and the girl was reading a book. The brunette asked if it was really something like, "It's not safe for girls to go to a 24-hour store at night." The guy replied that there was no safety. The girlfriend had the right to do what she wanted, but it was too risky. Kang-hee said that there was a robbery at that store a few months ago, and that girl was inside. It was a remote alley. It was so deserted. There was no video surveillance either. The brunette was happy that she was able to eat so tasty and inexpensively. She admitted that the girl would be less scared if Detective Zhu were dining here. Kang-hee said with a smile that she liked the supermarkets. She was going to come here again, and occasionally visit the buffet restaurants. Ha Zhang looked at his friend carefully. He asked what the girl would do if a robber showed up. The detective didn't understand the question. What did she mean? What will she do? She admitted that she would give him a good beating, of course. The young man wondered what the brunette's hobby was. Kang-hee answered, catching criminals. The guy had something nice in mind, not catching criminals. He asked what the girl would like to do. Kang-hee laughed cheerfully and replied that she wanted to catch the most dangerous criminals. Suddenly, the girl fell silent. An unpleasant thought pierced her consciousness. The detective realized that it was just like a robot, which only knows how to work. The girl shook from such thoughts. The brunette decided to think again. She was not like that at all. She forced herself to think what she would like. The brunette watched his girlfriend attentively. He admitted that he liked it even better this way. Kang-hee turned her head in his direction in surprise and asked what he meant. The guy said that passion and endurance were what made the relationship ideal. The brunette didn't understand what kind of strange taste he had. She thought about it. Now the girl understood why the handsome man had never had a relationship. The brunette asked Zhu Kang-hee if she was cold. The girl looked at him confusedly. She asked again if he was talking about her. The young man opened his cashmere coat and said that he would warm Kang-hee. The girl froze in surprise. The brunette asked his friend to say she was cold. He watched Detective Zhu closely. A blush colored her cheeks. Their hearts beat loudly in unison, filling the silence with their fast, loud rhythm. The girl apologized sheepishly. She said that she was not cold at all, but she would like to feel warm. The guy kept his coat unbuttoned. He called her to him. He told Kang-hee to hug him. The young man froze when the girl's gentle arms wrapped around his waist. She was carefully hugging her boyfriend. Ha Zhang asked if his friend liked listening to his heartbeat. The brunette thought. He kept asking, did she like hugs, was it cold? And so on. How many childish and awkward phrases there were. And among many others like that, his last one. Kang-hee pressed herself closer to the young man. The brunette thought that this phrase of his was the most special. She heard how his heart beat rhythmically. The brunette asked if she liked it. Kang-hee admitted that she liked it very much. The handsome man, wearing a cashmere coat over his hospital pajamas, smiled warmly. He confessed that it was his first gift for Kang-hee. The young man was thoughtful. He said seriously so that his girlfriend would listen attentively, so that she would appreciate every minute of this life, until she was sated. Kang-hee clung to the brunette. It was all like a gift. Could she really call whenever she wanted to hear his heartbeat? Ha Zhang covered the girl with the flaps of his coat. He looked at her tenderly. He said that she could do it whenever she wanted. The brunette wanted to lift her head and free herself. The boyfriend enjoyed the hugs. He asked her to stand like that for a little while longer, if she didn't mind. The girl raised her head and agreed only for 1 minute. The handsome guy looked at his girlfriend and asked for 5 minutes. Detective Zhu agreed to 2 minutes. The guy immediately offered his own option. He named a time period of 3 minutes. Suddenly, Detective Zhu agreed to 3 minutes. She closed her eyes and hugged her boyfriend tightly again. The brunette gently stroked the girl's hair. He noticed that she was so small and fragile that it seemed to him that Kang-hee could break. The young man admitted that he had to restrain himself so as not to crush his girlfriend in his arms. He asked how much the brunette ate. Kang-hee immediately objected. saying that she wasn't that short for a girl who was 168 centimeters tall. The brunette immediately, in surprise, asked if her boyfriend thought so only because he himself had a good physique. 3 minutes later, a lone window glowed in the darkness, like a lighthouse in the night sea of the city. Its light cut through the thick darkness, casting golden reflections. The young people stood close to each other outside Kang Hee's house, their silhouettes frozen in the dim light of the street lamp. Detective Ju admitted that she planned to sleep the entire next day, so she didn't know if she would be able to answer the phone. The brunette smiled. He asked if his girlfriend was really going to skip dinner. He asked her to call him right away when she woke up. The brunette objected. The girl didn't think she could. Ha Zhang insisted that his friend set the alarm. The detective said that she wouldn't hear him. The handsome guy laughed. He suggested coming up with something more convincing. As far as the guy remembered, his girlfriend was a light sleeper. Kang Hee insisted that she was human too. She had barely slept for a week, so she needed to sleep for at least 1 day. This was not the brunette's whim. The girl admitted that her body demanded it. That's why she won't be able to answer or hear the alarm clock. Kang Hee admitted that this was the only way she could hold out for the next week. The brunette looked at his friend attentively. He didn't say anything. The girl said that it was enough for her to eat her fill and get enough sleep. Ha Zhang smiled. He noticed that this was her way of life. The detective immediately tensed up. She asked her boyfriend what was next. Was he really going to scold her? The girl folded her arms across her chest. The brunette didn't intend to do that. He wished his girlfriend a good night's sleep. Kang Hee didn't expect such an answer. She looked at the guy with wide eyes. The handsome man smiled charmingly and said that he would come to wake his girlfriend. He did not intend to find fault. He was sure that here it was simply necessary to act. The glass facade of Sejong Hospital was bathed in the gentle rays of dawn, golden light gliding across the mirrored windows. Sejong cautiously looked into his room. What the guy saw there made him freeze in surprise. Yu Ji-ying was in his room. The girl smiled sweetly. She looked at the young man. The guy stared at the visitor in confusion. The brunette raised his hand sharply and looked at his wristwatch. He said that it was already too late for visits. The girl ignored his remark. She reminded Ha-jun that he had not yet taken his medicine. She filled a glass with water and handed the medicine to the brunette. Ji-ying insisted that the brunette drink the necessary medicine. Ha-jun told the interviewer that there was no need for it. He only took the drugs because he didn't want to upset his grandfather. Ji-ying concluded that the brunette was dating someone, since he forgot to accept them. She thoughtfully noted that the guy should dress warmer. The brunette wiped his mouth with his hand. Ji-ying asked what would happen if he caught a cold. Ha Zhang turned away from the visitor. He was surprised. He thought it was a surprising fact. The guest did not take her eyes off him. The guy slowly sat down on the sofa. He asked how the girl knew he was here, and how Ji-ying knew he was dating someone. The brunette reasoned that if he thought about it, it might seem like he was being followed. The girl shuddered at such words. Her eyes widened. Ji-ying screamed indignantly. She explained that the brunette had not contacted, was absent from work. That's why the girl called the guy's grandfather. She admitted that it was a complete accident with the pills. She didn't know that he hadn't taken them yet. The brunette stared at his interlocutor with distrust. The guy thought for a moment and said that Yoon Jae-in, who knew him, would not be so worried. He looked at the girl carefully. He insisted that the girl answer. Ji-in swallowed nervously. She understood that this was a warning. And if so, then she had to give in. The guest reminded that she was the only person the brunette allowed to be her friend. She asked why she had to do such terrible things. Ha-jun strongly recommended that the girl could find someone else to talk to or start dating. Zayn was alarmed. It was so sudden. Why did the brunette bring this up? The guy insisted that his friend stop clinging to him. The girl felt a tremor throughout her body. She found the strength to ask if it was because of Ju Kang-hee. Ha Zhang did not hide anything from the visitor. He looked at the girl seriously. His positive answer was short. Ji-ying reminded him how many times she had told him to marry her. She could endure everything. Had he forgotten that? After all, she was the first one he liked. The handsome man folded his arms across his chest and smiled charmingly. He reminded her that the girl had said she hated him. Had she really forgotten about that? Ji-ying turned away from her interlocutor. She admitted that she was only 9 years old then, and the brunette was sick and weak then. The girl admitted that despite the fact that the guy was the only grandson in the Yu family, he did not have any outstanding abilities at that time. But now, the interlocutor clenched her fists in anger. She turned to Ha Jong. The guy interrupted her. He admitted that he had met someone. Ji Ying stared at the young man, dumbfounded. Her eyes were filled with surprise. Her heart was pounding furiously in her chest. The handsome man grinned his signature smile. He tilted his head to the side, silently watched the reaction of his interlocutor.